cousin called me at midnight to babysit her grown kids. I said no, chaos followed, and now I have a restraining order. Even though I hardly knew her or her adult children, I declined my cousin's midnight call asking me to watch them. I have my own life, work full-time, and am 28. Being 28, you know. Naturally, that is irrelevant because it seems that I should always schedule time for my family. I know maybe 7% of them by name and 15% of them by face, but let's overlook that. I'm sorry, but someone is sure to get bogged down in the details with the 400 Mildreds, 250 Lindas, and 800 Stephanies, Chelseas, and Janets I see once every full planetary alignment. Naturally, when my parents, grandma, and siblings are all free, I make time for them. Being the youngest of 3, I work at the most forgiving job, even though it's not that bad. I also schedule time for other people I see on a regular basis. Well, let's get back to the funeral. Throughout the pre-ceremonial event, I kept getting the question, "Do you remember me?" And, "Are you aware of my identity?" To prevent any discomfort, I responded yes, yes, and yes. It's been a long time. One of my cousins, of whom I have no recollection but who evidently speaks to my mom on a daily basis, approached me during that time and introduced me to her children. We said hello to each other. According to their mother, they had been eagerly awaiting my arrival and appeared ecstatic to meet me. What the expletive? Was the first thing that came to me, but I ignored it because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. My cousin informed me that her children were in my state, around 40 minutes away from my home, and that they were roughly my age. I thought, oh, that's awesome, but I didn't give a damn. She said she would discuss it with my mother and proposed a little gathering later this year. Yes, all right. I took it as a cool, I don't have to worry about it, and went on, even though I'm not 14 anymore and don't need permission to do anything. Let's travel ahead to roughly 45 minutes. I receive a call at around midnight from a number located in the city where the majority of my family resides. Furthermore, the location is quite specific, too specific to be spam. I panicked, of course. My late grandfather was only a few years older than my grandma, who was down there at the time. Call me suspicious. I picked up the phone. Hi, name. It's your relative. How are you? My thoughts are, who the expletive? However, I answered, hey, what's up, is everything all right? Yes, she responded, as if perplexed by my inquiry. Everything is all right, just checking in to see when you're free to get lunch this weekend with her children's names. I felt like that meme with all the mathematics going about after I eventually figured out who this was. This woman couldn't have contacted me at almost midnight to arrange her expletive playdate. I'm sorry, what? I said. Remember at the funeral? She said. We discussed getting together later with you and kids' names. In addition to son's name, applying to university, daughter's name is transferring there for her junior year. I was thinking that we could meet after their Saturday morning tour, and you could take them out to lunch. Alcohol is just nowhere. Son's name is just 18. Hold on. What? She claimed they were about my age, but her son is incapable of drinking, as I clearly recall. She then begins to babble about how her daughter, who is 22 years old and doesn't know what moderation means, isn't permitted to drink unless she or her husband are around. What on earth would a 28 almost 29-year-old have to discuss with an 18 and 22-year-old? Perhaps I'm the only one who thinks this. Don't use drugs, concentrate on your studies, and don't get anyone pregnant. What's the topic of discussion? In addition, I don't even know these individuals. I was gasping and squawking on the phone before I even realized it. It was not appreciated by my cousin. I muttered, yeah, I don't think so, but I was too busy laughing to hear what she was saying. I don't get off until around 8 p.m. on Saturdays since I work a double shift. Well, first of all, I don't know what's so funny about what I said, she shot back. Additionally, you may simply have a wonderful supper or do something else. 8 p.m. It's not that late, I had lost all patience by now. Ma'am, this isn't Star Trek, and I work about 40 minutes away. After an 11-hour shift, I'm not in the mood to babysit, and I won't be arriving home until about 9 o'clock. Although this is a college town, I can suggest a few places for you guys to check out on your own. There aren't many locations that don't serve alcohol. They do have other drinks, after all. She said, pardon me. I am aware that your mother did not teach you to treat others rudely, especially your relatives. I don't know you, dude. You're calling me at the most inconvenient time to arrange a get-together with your children, who are not my age, and I have no idea who you are. You're all young adults, girl. I cover the cost of my own health insurance. We are not alike. Do not call me again, please. After hanging up, I had a brief argument with my fiancé, who had been awakened by this absurdity. I'm not going to hear the end of this during regular waking hours, of course. In a subtle way, I hoped she would wake up and complain about me so my mother would scold her for phoning us at such an inappropriate hour. However, I am aware that my mother will point out that I should have been a bit more polite. To be honest, I believe I did okay by refraining from using profanity during the discussion. Perhaps I'm simply talking about my zero expletive tolerance. Update. It turns out that by making a joke about my cousin calling my mom to complain about me, I jinxed myself because she actually did just that. She awoke my hard-working, impoverished mother to spy on me. In my opinion, my mother is a complete gem, yet I have witnessed her attack others like a rogue chainsaw. Her charming fairy act wasn't a lie to me. Tinkerbell has a tendency to be petty. She mentioned that she said some words, which is her way of stating that she cursed, but she didn't tell me exactly what she said. After saying one sentence, she hung up. My mom contacted my cousin back to get the whole story when she had gotten up and had her coffee. She gave me a call at that point. My mom questioned me, "Did you make a Star Trek reference during a conversation with your cousin as to why you wouldn't be able to have dinner with her kids?" As soon as I answered, and I could tell she was struggling to maintain her composure while being a mother. Indeed, I did. Since I only have a car and still need to pay gas, she was giving the impression that I had a transporter in my pocket. Over the phone, I could definitely hear her trying not to laugh. "Honey, I don't think she gets your sense of humor." Well, that should come as no surprise given that we don't even know one another. At that moment, my mom burst out laughing so loudly that my dad could hear it from a different room. Through the speaker, I could hear him laughing. My mother didn't have the strength to tell me to apologize just yet, even though I know she wanted to. She advised me to wait till my cousin had calmed down a bit, but she would keep me updated. I was traveling to work at the time of this call, which is what nearly caused me to crash my car. I understand that what your cousin did was absurd, but do you think it was appropriate to laugh at her? My mother asked. I won't reveal precisely what Mom told me next, but it seems that in her initial outburst, she had come up with a rather colorful moniker for my cousin. The N-word appeared in the name, but don't worry, we're all black. I had never heard my mother use that word in my entire life. She was so furious that I'm shocked she was able to contact this woman back, much less engage in a normal discussion. Therefore, I believe it should be clear that nobody in this household should be concerned about my urinating. I'm a bundle of kittens in comparison to my mom when she's exhausted. Second update. From now on, I shall refer to her as this raccoon dog since I have officially had enough of her. Her name is in my contacts as well. Get ready to be as mistaken as I was if you believed that the entitlement and rudeness couldn't get much worse. I suppose I'm simply a expletive fool if you did believe that things might get worse. I decided to work on a new beer recipe I had developed since I had today off. So there I was, with my brew pot, in the kitchen. To put things in perspective, the first step in making beer at home is to prepare the wort, which is essentially your sugar water. In order to add malt extracts, the grains are first boiled in a kettle or stock pot, and then the heat is turned off. Before boiling the liquid once more, you must stir until the extracts dissolve. Hops are then added, adding a range of tastes and bitterness. In instance, I utilize several components that I produce myself during the initial boil, making my brews a little more complex. Because these materials take a long time to mature, I make sure not to squander any of it. Later on, this will be significant. The raccoon dog from hell called me while I was relaxing and doing my thing. My curiosity overcame me, and I answered after considering leaving her on voicemail. "Hey? Hi, this is RD. Oh, hello. What is going on?" I wanted to express my regret for the other day. The time didn't even cross my mind. Usually, I stay up quite late talking to someone. Unable to relate. Yes, I do feel that. No worries. Internally fuming. So pay attention. I was hoping you would think twice about hanging out with blah and blah, even though I know we had a rough start. I know you were worried since you don't know each other, and they don't know anyone in that town. I understand. All I want is for them to be with someone they feel at ease with. Now, as I've stated in other remarks, I believe it to be very reasonable. She is their mother after all, and is presumably merely attempting to ensure that college is enjoyable for them. Personally, I detested attending classes and spending so much time with strangers. I took online classes and stayed at home since I didn't like the idea of mingling at college. I told her that I understood exactly where she was coming from. I appreciate your understanding. Now, your mother informed me that due to your job, these things must be planned for you in advance, RD said. Since we'll all be getting together anyhow, I was thinking about Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yes, of course. I don't see why not, as we'll all be at the same location anyhow. Excellent, many thanks. They will be quite thrilled. Fantastic. With a gentle click-clack, I put the brew kettle back on the hot stove and said, "Sounds good. Are you preparing a meal?" "Yes." "You can cook, don't you?" "What are you producing?" "I am brewing wort for a new recipe that I am experimenting with." "Wort? What is that?" "Oh, it's beer's sugar base." "I apologize. Did you mention beer?" "Yes." "Are you brewing beer?" "Yes." "Oh, huh. Is your mom aware of what you're doing?" "I suppose so, since she knows I can make it." Awkward quiet. "I said beer, not cocaine, didn't you hear me?" "Are you also able to make that?" "No, you're acting like I'm breaking something," so I asked. "Well, I'm just worried about the potential impact that could have on the children. Perhaps don't bring that up when you're hanging around. I am already aware that certain conventional families may not find my interests and employment choice suitable. But I would be dishonest if I claimed that her reaction and treatment of something I'm really passionate about didn't make me feel a bit upset. Only because I was going to see them over the holidays, and since I don't really discuss my passions in front of my family out of respect and to prevent any drama, did I not decline the hangout and end the call at that moment. Therefore, it wouldn't have been a problem. I simply agreed and rolled my eyes. Fantastic. All right, the final item. I am aware that the neighborhood has a large number of affordable apartments and student housing. Therefore, I wanted to know which ones we ought to investigate that would be both close to the school and you. This is the point at which reality set in. To be honest, I smiled a little. Well, the rates are fairly reasonable for a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the school. That's amazing. You two might live next door. Yes, regarding that. Actually, before the year ends, we will be relocating to the city where I work, which is over 40 minutes away, so we won't be in the area. Oh, hold on. I'm not really paying attention. Are you stating that you will not be able to visit them? Put Britney Spears' WTF expression here. Actually, no, not at all. We are moving closer to our employment so that we won't have to drive as far, which is the main goal. But you do it all the time, so I just don't understand why you couldn't go see them once or twice a week. Well, that would be really inconvenient for me. That doesn't seem very likely to me. Is spending a couple hours with your family inconvenient? Do you not make the extra drive to your parents' city? Yeah, but traffic is typically the cause. So, you go see them despite though you'll be even farther away when you move. I don't understand why it's so inconvenient for you to drive halfway to see your relatives, especially on days like today when you should be spending time with your family instead of creating booze. Simply put, I think your priorities are a little out of order. For the remainder of this talk, my brain decided that civility was unnecessary and pushed it into a locked closet, despite the fact that I have painfully and deliberately chosen my words throughout all of our conversations. I'm sorry, did you really just compare the level of importance between your kids, who I have said exactly 0 words to in my entire 28 years of life, to my parents? I exploded. All right, honey, let me start by saying that I have no idea to whom you are speaking. Once more, who the explicit are you? Again, what do I owe you? What time or portion of my day do you deserve to reclaim? Why have you returned to my life? If we hadn't crossed paths again, what would I miss? Oh, nothing, since I don't know you explicitly. Furthermore, I don't have an attic, so I don't care if you choose to move in. Years before I can even recall your explicit name, I'm going to visit my folks and deliver them all the homemade alcohol I desire. And explicit you for diverting my attention as my explicit word is now ruined due to my kettle boiling over. I nearly lost it when I heard my fiancé laugh out loud in the adjacent room, but that was in the heat of the moment. I sounded like an irate Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, he said later. Since I was so focused on getting the sticky mess of my damaged mixture off my stove and floor before my cat could get to it, I honestly can't recall if she said anything else after that. I hung up after saying an irate "see you on Thanksgiving," which was all I could manage in my annoyance. Although I haven't heard from anybody else since, I'm quite certain that nobody will have the audacity to bring it up given how out of character that blow-up was for me. I don't get angry very often, so when I do, my parents usually just make sure I'm all right and prevent anyone from bringing it up later. I have to give my fiancé credit for making me laugh so fast at the absurd noise I made when I saw the pot boil over when he came to assist me clean up the mess. I asked him in jest if he believed I would be punished for that outburst. He claimed that he believes I frightened her enough to make her temporarily retreat to her trash den. Third update. I have had nothing to do at all for the first time since Thanksgiving. We appreciate everyone who took the time out of their day to read this, as it will be the final installment of this chaotic roller coaster. I'm glad I could keep you entertained. I know that most of you were anticipating some kind of media circus monstrosity family meal, But this is the moment you've all been waiting for. To be honest, so did I. However, this year, the goddess of chaos chose to be my best friend and made the holiday absolutely ideal for me. My family's Thanksgiving was cancelled. My fiancé and I had to work on Black Friday, my grandma stayed at home in remembrance of my grandfather, and my parents traveled to see my brother. Thus, we peacefully spent Thanksgiving at home. We watched a marathon of horror films while snuggled in our pajamas and enjoying a delectable supper and fantastic drinks that I had made. I was swooning over it like a fat cat in a tuna factory, and it was flawless. Then my phone rang, though. I choose to disregard the number because I didn't recognize it. They left a voicemail, but they could wait until tomorrow because I was on vacation for the holidays. Another call was received a few minutes later. The same figure. Then another. And yet another. And yet another. I was on the verge of enclosing my phone in a salt barrier in the hopes that it would deter this stalker. As the logical genius that he is, my fiancé recommended that I listen to the message, which I had entirely forgotten about. I turned it on so we could hear it. This is your landlord, SFM. Since the workplace is plainly closed, I'm using my personal phone. I apologize for disturbing your vacation, but I must have a call from you as soon as possible. You're probably wondering where the raccoon dog comes in, but I phoned her back in a panic because I had missed around 8 calls from this woman by this time. Oh baby, it's going to feel like Christmas. I don't have the entire discussion committed to memory, but I know I can get it very near. I remember what I said, and my landlord wasn't very professional throughout this call. Don't judge, but I would have been furious too. I gave my landlord a call. Hey, she sounded as though she had discovered an entire turkey in the toilet. Hey, I'm so sorry, I didn't know this was you and I began. No, honey, I understand. Like everyone else, you were having a great time on vacation. Please don't even think about it. She cut me off. Here's a nervous laugh. So, what is going on? What's happening? Are you familiar with a woman named Raccoon Dog? She inquired. Her name was still a mystery to me, so I said, not off the top of my head, no. All right, so she's been berating our courteous cop for the last hour and a half and she knows you. She claimed that after you invited her children over, she is unable to contact you. Make sure that explicit didn't interpret my "see you on Thanksgiving" remark from our most recent phone conversation as an invitation to visit my house. I'm still having trouble connecting the dots at this point because I haven't spoken to this person in a month, and I was freaking out like a squirrel attempting to cross a busy street because my first thought when my landlord called me on her cell phone on Thanksgiving was eviction notice. I clarified that neither of us had invited anyone, thus I had no idea who this could be. See, that's what I thought, because you guys don't ever really have nobody around like that anyway, my landlord said, going into full nail salon black lady mode. Given that my fiancé and I are antisocial recluses, may my landlord rest in peace. The landlord went on. But she knows your identity, adding. And she has been requesting that we give her your room number without mentioning your fiancé. As in, really? No reputable business would simply divulge the information of its tenants in that manner. You would still be in violation of the law even if we did. What is she doing? I inquired. She parked in front of the fire zone with her kids in the car and is shouting police brutality because our courtesy officer gave her a fine and told her that if she doesn't move, we're going to have her car towed, stated my landlady. My apartment complex is very close to the university, and the main road leading to the separate properties is a frequently used route directly to many of the university buildings, as well as a third of the fraternities. They take this very, very, very seriously, and if there were a fire in that area, that section would most definitely be blocked off. Please note that the fine for parking in front of a fire zone here ranges from $500 to $2,000 depending on the location and severity of the situation. Did she relocate? I inquired. No, my landlord retorted. She threatened the courtesy officer after receiving a fine for the fire zone. Her children are still in the car, and he had to phone for assistance. My fiancé, seated next to me, burst out laughing like a crazy person as I cackled, clearly still in a panic because I still didn't know who this was. Yo, it's Raccoon Dog. My fiancé texted my mother. 55 what? What dog? My landlady interrupted. This poor woman sounded so defeated and worn out as she questioned, can you formally state that you didn't invite her and don't want her here? I told her everything from the beginning, and I could hear all the energy leave her body as she started laughing. This stunning woman said, okay, I got this expletive, in response to my confirmation. You guys have an incredibly nice Thanksgiving. We hung up. I couldn't stop thinking about this woman's children and how ashamed they must have been. I don't understand how I haven't heard from someone who has fled at this point. I was silently shocked, incredulous, and trying not to laugh. My fiancé clicked play on our movie and said, "Eat, watch." I honestly didn't know what to say, so I just followed his instructions, trying not to choke on my food from laughter. I tried to think of anything to say, but all I did was open my mouth before he stopped me with, "Nope, nope, 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 nope." When I later learned that RD, raccoon dog, had gotten in touch with her, my mother threw the biggest fit, accusing me of lying to her about spending Thanksgiving with her children. It seems that during the same phone call where I yelled at her, she was fined $2,000 by the courtesy officer assigned by my landlord, and to make matters worse, her husband had to pay $3,500 to bail her out of jail, and she was hit with an additional $7,500 fine for trespassing, resisting arrest, and threatening violence toward a police officer. Yes, I didn't even have to do anything, yet I am the expletive worst. It all began with a random, unsolicited phone call in the middle of the night a couple of months ago, and I'm still struggling to put the situation into words, and I'm trying to persuade myself that it really happened. The pièce de résistance. 2 days ago, her children created a group chat on one of my social media accounts with the three of us, apologizing for their crazy mother and all the crap she's said about me spending time with them. Did you think that was the best part? They said that what happened on Thanksgiving was the last straw for them, even though they had been wanting to apologize on her behalf for some time but were so ashamed that they decided to just leave me alone. These kids spent most of their Thanksgiving sitting in a car in front of a random apartment complex, and then they sat in a police station for an indeterminate amount of time until their dad could come get them. They knew their mom would be in jail overnight, and that bailing her out would blow half their Christmas fund. Which, yeah, imagine spending Thanksgiving stuck in a spectacle of pure insanity, brought on by your delusional mother. "There's a really great pizza place up the street," was all I could reply. "I'm off next Friday, and it's on me. I'm not sure what your schedules look like. This weekend, I have a pizza date and a restraining order, a match made in heaven." This whole thing has been such a cluster expletive dumpster explosion, and I hope you all liked sitting in it with me as much as I enjoyed writing it. My family hijacked my vacation plans for my golden sister and her kids. But this time, I had my own secret escape plan. Reddit, I need some perspective on this. I need advice with my family predicament, which has been accumulating for decades, but it's a long one. Despite growing up in a seemingly typical suburban Massachusetts family, I, 35 degrees Fahrenheit, have always struggled with this particular dynamic. The golden child has always been my older sister, Kate, 42F. Our home has been a monument to Kate's life since I can remember, with every wall adorned with her accomplishments and every discussion focused on her life. My parents were too busy getting ready for Kate's college interviews to buy a cake for my 10th birthday, which I can still clearly recall. They even attempted to pass off Kate's leftover graduation cake, which still had her name on it, as my birthday cake. As I grew up, Kate's accomplishments eclipsed every significant event in my life. Kate had recently been selected to the debate team, so my parents were hardly aware that I had made the honor roll in middle school. Kate had to tour a college campus, so they were unable to attend the ceremony when I won a local painting competition in high school. Knowing that expressing my accomplishments would only elicit a brief, "That's nice, dear," before the topic of Kate was brought up again, I learned to celebrate them in private, in my room. Even our possessions revealed the priorities of our family. The newest technology, stylish clothing, and everything Kate needed for her many extracurricular activities were always in her room. In contrast, my room was filled with hand-me-downs. When I expressed interest in taking music lessons, I had to make do with Kate's abandoned violin, her old clothes, and her old school supplies. I had trouble playing the violin since it was too large for me. We already spent so much on Kate's piano lessons this year. My mother responded in response to my request for a suitably sized one. All the way through high school, the trend persisted. I was forced to use borrowed library books to study while Kate received private instruction for her SATs. My parents took out a loan for her to buy a car for college. They advised me to take the bus when I needed assistance getting about. Kate's needs and desires were at the center of every financial choice, family discussion, and holiday preparation. It was really difficult in college. With the full backing of our parents, Kate had earned her degree from a renowned university. They could only agree to pay half of the tuition at a public school when it was my turn. They clarified, "We're still paying off Kate's student loans. You'll need to figure out the rest on your own." In order to make ends meet, I worked 2 part-time jobs while I was a student, frequently dozing off over my textbooks. Kate, in the meantime, was beginning her career at a position our parents had helped her land through their contacts. 7 years ago, Kate got married, and everything changed, or rather, grew worse. For a whole year, Our family's whole attention was on the wedding. For her ideal wedding, which included a designer gown, an opulent location, and a guest list of more than 300, my parents took out another loan. Despite their concerns about the payments, I recall hearing them in the kitchen one evening and their insistence that nothing was too good for Kate's special day. Was there ever any question that she was her maid of honor? I was supposed to coordinate bridal showers, plan a lavish bachelorette party, and manage any minor emergencies that arose. My mother told me, "Don't be selfish, Elizabeth. This is your sister's special time," when I expressed how stressed I was with juggling these obligations while working a full-time job. The twins followed. Our parents were ecstatic when Kate revealed she was expecting twins. Even though they were still repaying the wedding loan, they contributed to the down payment on a home close to them. I witnessed them spend their retirement money, which they claimed they couldn't access when I needed assistance with college, on the day they signed those documents. However, they claimed that this was different. "This is for our grandchildren." Who was the default babysitter, you ask? Yes, I do. It started out as sporadic babysitting. The request, "Elizabeth, could you watch the boys for a few hours?" became a weekly ritual, which was later extended to evenings whenever they had appointments. My parents were in favor of this arrangement, stating, "This is what family does." Kate and her husband Jack, 43 million, assumed that I would always be there to assist them whenever I attempted to object. Even while I adore them, the twins, who are now active 7-year-olds, are draining. The routine is the same every weekend. Kate unexpectedly drops them off at my place, usually with a pretext that she needs me time, or has essential errands to run. The lads run amok, transforming my tiny apartment into a catastrophe. Kate starts crying about how overwhelmed she is when I try to set limits or ask for advance warning, and my parents criticize me for not being supportive. I put in a lot of overtime to establish myself in the marketing industry. I recently received a promotion offer that would involve greater hours and more travel. My mother remarked, "But what about the twins? Your sister needs you here." Kate added, "You can't take that job, Elizabeth. Who will help me with the boys?" When I brought up this topic during a family dinner in the hopes of receiving some congratulations. It seems as though my time, profession, and life are completely irrelevant. My father adds, "Family should come first, Elizabeth." My mother always responds, "Your sister has 2 children to look after. You don't know what tired really means." When I tried to explain how overwhelming it all is, Kate accused me of being envious of her life and her kids. She replied, "You're just bitter because you're still single," as though my marital status were the only factor that determines my value as a person. After a particularly demanding weekend with the twins, I made the decision to finally treat myself to a beach vacation last month. They had successfully damaged my laptop and left permanent markings on my couch. I knew I needed a vacation. I discovered a small, unpretentious resort in Florida that was ideal for a tranquil retreat. My mother's eyes glowed when I brought it up during our weekly family supper. "Oh, that's perfect. We should all go together. The twins would love the beach." Before I could protest, Kate had already begun organizing events. She stated, "You can take the boys swimming while Jack and I have some alone time," as though my trip would naturally turn into a time for them to be looked after. In exchange for my assistance with the twins, of course, my parents even offered to upgrade my reservation to a superior resort where they would all stay. Totally disregarding the fact that this was meant to be my vacation, they began organizing activities and outings centered around what the twins would like. I made a choice that would alter everything while I was lying in bed that night. I reserved a separate resort on a quiet little island. I kept the change in plans a secret from everyone. Silently, I began preparing by scheduling time off work, packing my things covertly, and ensuring that my emergency fund was available. Even though I know it's dishonest, I simply couldn't stand it any longer. At the airport, they will be separated from us. While I board my flight to another location, they will be traveling to Florida. I've disabled location sharing and am ready for the inevitable criticism. Yes, I am aware that there will be drama. Yes, I am aware that they will be upset. But I want to prioritize myself for the first time in my life. I've been the dependable sister, the ideal daughter, and the always available aunt for 35 years. To meet my family's expectations, I've given up my social life, my weekends, and my own needs. I was constantly babysitting, so I missed out on dating prospects. I have declined advancements that might conflict with the needs of my family. To be there for them whenever they need me, I've put my personal life on hold. Right now, I'm fleeing a lifetime of being taken advantage of, not just a holiday. I intend to utilize this as a turning point to set clear limits with my family and perhaps even take a complete vacation from them. I'm sick of always making sacrifices, being the family's pillar of support, and being the dependable fallback option. Reddit, what should I do? Am I exaggerating? Is it appropriate for me to want something else for myself, or should I merely follow their plans and accept my place in the family? First update, I appreciate all of your help and guidance. Since my last post, a lot has transpired, and I want to explain how it all turned out. Although everything went according to plan, the day at the airport was more emotionally fraught than I had anticipated. I purposefully chose a different check-in station that was far from where my family would be when I arrived early. I watched everyone come through the glass walls of the terminal, Jack checking their booking details, my parents looking excited, Kate handling the twins, and Kate hauling baggage. I silently went through security for my own flight as soon as they started to head to their check-in counter. As soon as they realized I wasn't at their gate, my phone began to buzz. The bewildered text first appeared. Where are you? Gate B12 is where we are. Then the anxious ones. How are you, Elizabeth? Has something taken place? And lastly, the irate ones. How could you treat us like this? The guys are in tears. Before I boarded my aircraft, I switched off my phone. I experienced a peculiar fusion of liberation and remorse for the first time in years. I had lived with that guilt for the majority of my life. However, freedom? It was exhilarating, and it was new. The crowded tourist destination they were going to was nothing like the little island where my resort was located. Years of strain vanished the instant I set foot on the beach. No twins to babysit, no family problems to handle, no schedule to adhere to. The ocean, me, and complete freedom. In fact, the first 2 days were challenging. The twins would be eating lunch now, or Kate would typically require assistance going to bed at this hour, so I kept checking the time. It's difficult to break decades of indoctrination. However, something changed on the third day. I experimented with things I had always wanted to do but had never had time for. I loved every minute of my silly yet fun surfing lesson. I became friends with a bunch of lone travelers when I enrolled in a yoga class by the beach. I even had a spontaneous dinner date with a fascinating man I met at the resort's coffee shop one evening. Even though it was only a casual supper, it served as a reminder that I could live a life apart from my family. When I eventually turned my phone back on after 5 days, that was the true test. There were dozens of voicemails, more than 300 text messages, and 147 missed calls. Even my mother had called my place of employment to report a family emergency. Fortunately, I had previously told my supervisor that I would be taking a holiday. Some of the voicemails were played for me. My mother's tone changed from one of concern to one of rage to one of manipulation. Elizabeth, how could you leave your family in such a way? The twins are inconsolable. Did we raise you this way? Even worse were Kate's messages. You've ruined everything. The lads are persistent in their request for Aunt Lizzie. I can't handle meetings by myself, so Jack had to shorten them. However, one message struck a different chord. My father sent it, and he seemed unsure for once. Elizabeth, please let us know you're safe even though I don't understand what's happening. I had never heard him talk to me without instantly defending Kate or pressuring me to do more before. I texted our family group chat just once. I'm having a great vacation and am safe. When I get back, I'll get in touch with you. Please give me space. I then turned off the conversation and resumed talking to myself. The following 5 days were life-changing. In addition to reading bedtime stories to the twins, I also read 3 novels. I spoke with other guests without interruption. Every evening, instead of rushing home to assist with baths and sleep, I watched the sunset. In order to digest years' worth of suppressed emotions, I even began journaling. I ate dinner at a little beachside eatery last night. When the elder waitress saw that I was alone, she inquired as to whether I was content with my seclusion. She said something that stuck with me after I gave her a brief explanation of my circumstances. Family is vital, honey, but not at the expense of your own well-being. Putting yourself first is sometimes the boldest thing you can do. I didn't head straight to my flat when I got home. In order to give myself time to get ready for the inevitable confrontation, I had reserved a hotel room for 2 nights. During this period, I updated my work emergency contacts, changed the locks on my doors, and, above all, put my boundaries in writing. I accidentally liked a coworker's post on social media, which is how my family found out I was back. My mother and Kate arrived at my apartment building in a matter of hours, constantly buzzing my intercom. Across the street, I watched them from the window of my hotel room, feeling oddly cut off from their spectacular performance. I'm going to confront them tomorrow, at a neutral coffee shop, not my residence. I know it won't be simple, but I've prepared what I want to say. When I consider it, my hands tremble. But I'm choosing myself for the first time in my life. And I know I'm doing the right thing in spite of the worry, the guilt, and the drama that will undoubtedly ensue. I'll provide another update following my talk with my family. I'm grateful because Reddit gave me the confidence to take this first step toward independence. Second update. As scheduled, my family and I gathered at the coffee shop, and it was even more heated than I had anticipated. This is what took place. The encounter at the coffee shop began politely enough. I got there early and sat at a corner table, where I could see the front door and the emergency exit, a habit I'd formed from years of expecting family drama. I could hardly grasp my coffee cup because my hands were shaking so much. My parents, Kate, and, surprisingly, Jack all showed up together. I am glad there are no twins. I raised my hand and said what I had practiced before they began their planned speeches. I'm establishing boundaries, and they can't be negotiated. The 2 hours that followed were a masterclass in manipulating emotions. Kate started crying as she described how my absence had traumatized the twins. My mom attempted to instill guilt, following all that we have done for you. Unexpectedly, Jack tried to mediate by offering a compromise in which I would only see the kids every other weekend. For the most part, my dad sat quietly and uneasy. Kate's statement, "You're being selfish. Family means sacrifice," was the pivotal moment. Something broke inside of me. Clearly but calmly, I responded, "Yes, family means sacrifice, but it's supposed to go both ways. When was the last time any of you sacrificed anything for me?" The ensuing hush was deafening. I revealed everything for the first time: the years of being Kate's second best friend, the unfair financial treatment, and the ongoing belief that my life and time were not as valuable as theirs. I then showed them my calendar for the previous year, with every weekend designated for babysitting and every holiday tailored to their requirements. Attempting to interrupt, my mother said, "But that's what aunts do." I responded by saying something I had never before dared to say. "No, that's what paid babysitters do. And Kate, if you need this much help, maybe it's time to consider hiring one." From there, the discussion took a different turn. My mother followed Kate as she rushed out. Remarkably sorry, Jack remained and acknowledged that they had exploited my availability. After remaining silent for a while, my father said, "We never meant to make you feel this way. It was something, but it wasn't an apology." I carried out my strategy when they departed. I relocated to a different area of the city and got a new apartment. Although it's smaller than my previous residence, it's in a safe building with a doorman who has been informed of my predicament. Only my workplace and a select group of close pals now have my updated phone number. Rebuilding my life from scratch was the most difficult aspect, not the relocation or the planning. I had no true hobbies and few close acquaintances because I had spent years being there for my family. I began modestly. I enrolled in pottery lessons, joined a local reading club, and accepted dinner invitations from coworkers that I had previously consistently declined. It was a weird first weekend of real freedom. I did things that were previously unthinkable, including staying up late, going to a farmer's market, and spending hours perusing a bookshop. Kate didn't text me urgently. Mom doesn't make guilt-tripping calls. No requests for last-minute babysitting. My family's response to my relocation was harsh but expected. When my mother attempted to contact me via the company switchboard, they learned that my new job does not allow personal calls during business hours. On one occasion, Kate even visited my office, but security was alerted beforehand. She wrote a tearful letter accusing me of destroying our family. Jack was the source of the unexpected development. He apologized by email for his part in making the scenario possible. At first, Kate objected to him taking the twins to events on the weekends, but she has since come to terms with it. It's a minor yet important modification. My folks are having a hard time adjusting. Dad occasionally texts, usually in an embarrassing attempt to strike up a conversation. Mom fluctuates between angry outbursts and icy quiet. She left a voicemail last week stating, "When you're done with this rebellion, we'll welcome you back." This isn't a phase, and she doesn't get it. My new reality is this. Without regular family interruptions, work has significantly improved. I'm more productive and focused. After noticing the shift, my supervisor assigned me to oversee a significant new project. For the first time in years, I'm also dating casually, but I'm taking it slow. Internally, there has been the biggest shift. I no longer have the ongoing background anxiety that I had for years. I've started exercising frequently, improved my diet, and slept better. According to my therapist, yes, I have finally begun therapy. I am beginning to recuperate from what she refers to as chronic family stress syndrome. The twins sent me a gift last weekend that included handcrafted notes expressing how much they miss me. Even though it was bittersweet, I remained resolute. I carefully wrote them back to let them know that, although I love them, I need some time to look after myself. I had to write it even though Kate is unlikely to read it to them. There's a lightness about you now. You look years younger, observed an old acquaintance of mine when I ran into her yesterday. She is correct. I feel lighter in spite of the angry texts, the efforts at emotional manipulation, and the guilt that still surfaced. More liberated. Family love shouldn't feel like a prison sentence, I'm discovering. Respect for personal space, acknowledgement of one's own needs, and reciprocal assistance, rather than only one-sided sacrifice, are all components of true love. My new flat will be 1 month old next week. This is the first time I've ever dared to throw a tiny housewarming celebration. Only a few buddies from pottery class, book club, and work. No expectations, no drama, no family, just individuals who embrace me for who I am. I'll provide another update soon. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the confidence to make a life shift. Update 3. Completed update. It has been a life-changing 3 months, and I want to describe how it has all come together. The confrontation I had been dreading and anticipating arrived last week. My father unexpectedly came up to my place of employment. His method was distinct from Kate's emotional manipulations or my mother's prior frenzied attempts. When he asked if we could have lunch together, he was composed, even resigned. We got together at a peaceful eatery close to my workplace. For the first time in my life, he truly saw me as his daughter, not as Kate's sister or the family's fallback option. He remarked, "You look healthy," in a startled tone. Happier. The fact that he hadn't seen my discontent for years weighed heavily on the observation that lingered between us. The family had presented him with a proposal. They were prepared to make concessions. If I agreed to take back my place in the family, I could have every other weekend off. He went on to say, they'd even pay for my time with the twins, as though making money off of the commitment would make it more alluring. They still didn't understand, I realized as I looked at him across the table. They did not view my independence as a basic right, but rather as a negotiating chip. Dad, I replied, I'm not negotiating my freedom. I'm living it. The conversation that ensued was the most candid one I have ever had with my father. I described how their incessant focus on Kate had impacted me emotionally as much as practically. I told him about memories he had forgotten or had never noticed, dreams disregarded, accomplishments overlooked, and birthdays neglected. His reaction was surprising. He sat for a long time in quiet, not making the normal defense of their decisions. At last, he stated, "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. We never saw how much we were hurting you." Although that wasn't quite an apology, it was the first time I had ever been acknowledged. When he inquired about my new life, that was the true turning point. He paid attention for the first time as I discussed my pottery lessons, my job advancement, and the new acquaintances I had made. Even though it was not flawless, I showed him pictures of a vase I had built. I was shocked by what he said next. "You seem to have built a good life for yourself without us." Both the recognition and the grief in his voice were genuine. We agreed at the end of lunch that nothing would ever be the same again. He gave me my first sincere embrace in years as he bid farewell. "I hope someday we can be part of your life again, but on different terms." That exchange appeared to set off a final round of family strife. After learning of our lunch, my mother began a fresh round of emotional attacks. She has been informing family members that I need an intervention because I'm having a breakdown. Kate has been making passive-aggressive remarks about selfish sisters and broken families on social media because she feels deceived by our father's approval of my decisions. The difference is that none of it has the same impact on me as it formerly did. I've gained a viewpoint from my new life that I didn't have previously. Their actions, in my opinion, are an attempt to keep control over someone who has finally gained their freedom. My new flat seems like home now. My attempts at pottery and pictures of my chosen family, friends who value my independence and respect boundaries, adorn the walls. I've begun teaching my less experienced coworkers at work, ending the vicious loop of toxic support that has long ensnared me. My connection with time has changed the most. I get to spend the weekends any way I want. I've started learning Spanish, joined a local hiking group, and even started dating someone who respects and values my limits. I'm creating a life for the first time that is true to who I am rather than what my family demands of me. The twins sent me a homemade card last Sunday, which was obviously written under supervision. It was filled with regrettable statements about how much they miss their aunt. This would have previously led me into a downward spiral of uncertainty and remorse. Rather, I responded with a tender yet strong letter, stating that although I may not be as involved in their everyday life, my love for them hasn't changed, and that sometimes grown-ups need to look for themselves. According to my therapist, I am exhibiting what she refers to as post-traumatic growth. Not merely moving past the past but creating something more robust and wholesome in its stead. She has assisted me in realizing that I am not responsible for resolving the dysfunction in my family. Yesterday was the most recent development. Jack, Kate's husband, contacted me to let me know that my stance has caused changes in their home, not to place blame on me. They've finally recruited part-time help to help with the twins, and he's become a more involved parent. Jack believes it's better for everyone, but Kate is having trouble adjusting. I'm sitting in my home office getting ready for a business trip next week as I write this last update, something I could never have done in my previous life. A frame quotation that speaks to my path is on the wall behind my desk. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set yourself free. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to make my own decisions. If you're wondering if people in comparable circumstances are selfish for desiring their own lives, know that you're not. Being free is not selfish. Treating oneself is not unkind. Setting limits is not a sign of treachery. I have no idea how my relationship with my family may develop in the future. Perhaps one day we'll discover a different kind of connection, one based on respect for one another rather than duty. In the interim, I'm concentrating on fostering the life I've built, including my friendships, interests, profession, and, above all, my sense of self. This is not merely a conclusion, it's just the beginning. And I'm looking forward to what comes next for the first time in my life. My brother ruined my life by fabricating evidence of my affairs, but after 6 years, the truth finally came out. My high school love, Rachel, was 45 years old and I, a 45-year-old guy, was her spouse. Together, we have 4 daughters. Ashley, 18, Olivia, 21, Madison, 22, and Lauren, 24. We fell in love when we were both 14 years old during our freshman year. I can still clearly recall our English class when I first met her. I assisted her in picking up the book she had dropped. It was our reality, but it seemed like something from an adolescent film. From the first time they laid eyes on Rachel, my parents, Robert, 68, and Pamela, 66, fell in love. She was their unborn daughter. Mom would teach her our family dishes and invite her over for Sunday dinners even when they were first dating. Dad gave us relationship advice all the time and treated her like his own daughter. He would say things like, "Think before making big decisions and communication is key." Our relationship was shaped by those statements for many years. This parting is made much more agonizing by the unique memories that each of my girls has. Our oldest, Lauren, was my shadow when she was younger. In the park close to our house, I spent numerous weekends teaching her how to ride a bike. Like the older children, she was determined to learn without the use of training wheels. Her delighted smile brightened the entire neighborhood when she eventually succeeded. As she had envisioned, she is now a prosperous lawyer. When Madison, our artistic soul, was 15, she converted our garage into her art studio. I constructed an easel and arranged her materials to assist her in setting it up. That area became her haven after we transformed it over the course of a summer. Our living room is adorned with a family portrait that she painted. It was her first significant composition. If it's still there, I wonder. The best part of my weekends was watching Olivia play soccer. Until I had to miss them all, I never missed a single one. When my mother contacted me at work to tell me that I had made the varsity team as a freshman, I could still hear her happy voice. She learned how to play for me, and we practiced penalty kicks in the backyard for hours. At games, she constantly claimed that I was her fortunate charm. My tiny coding partner was Ashley, my tech-savvy youngest child. When she was 10 years old, we worked together to build her first computer. We would work on basic games late into the night since she was so eager to learn programming. She came up with the concept for an app that would use puzzles to teach children math. When everything collapsed, we were halfway through the development process. Our first few years of marriage were both magical and difficult. During our senior year, we were both pleased and afraid to learn that Rachel was expecting Lauren. I chose to work at a nearby manufacturing company while attending night classes rather than enrolling in college right away. While raising Lauren, Rachel worked part-time to complete her degree. Despite barely making ends meet and living in a small one-bedroom apartment, we were content. We learned collaboration and resilience over those years. But my 43-year-old younger brother James was always a specter over our joy. I was too trusting to notice the signs properly, but they were there from the start. James would make excuses to be around us even in high school. He would offer to drop Rachel off at our favorite cafe on date nights or offer to drive her home while I had basketball practice. I now understand that James had a pattern of compulsive behavior. He followed his middle school teacher to the grocery store and sent her letters since he was obsessed with her before Rachel. It was dismissed by our parents as a harmless crush. He developed an obsession with a girl in his high school class, making up intricate tales about their connection when they had hardly spoken. It was written off as a teenage drama once more. When Rachel and I got engaged, it was the first big warning sign. James became furious rather than merely disapproving. When he arrived at Rachel's place of employment, he created a commotion that nearly cost her her job. He was yelling that I had taken her away from him and that they were destined to be together. Rachel was afraid. She told me everything right away, and that's when I started thinking about severing my relationship with James. However, my parents stepped in. They persuaded us that James needed assistance rather than rejection. We attended family therapy sessions for months. James expressed regret, claimed to have changed, and seemed to accept our relationship. Although I now question whether it was all part of his long-term plan, he even gave a heartfelt speech during our wedding. James became more and more involved in our life over time. He positioned himself as our children's favorite uncle, helped me land a job at his company, and started showing up at family get-togethers all the time. He was especially close to Madison and Lauren, frequently bringing them out and purchasing them pricey presents. I assumed he was simply making amends for his previous actions by being a good uncle. In hindsight, I can see how he methodically gained the trust of each member of my family. He supported Rachel's professional networking, helped my parents with their money, and was always ready to provide a helping hand. In contrast to my hectic schedule and frequent business travels, he positioned himself as the dependable, stable sibling. I needed the business travels to advance in my job, but James took advantage of me. Some of the things he would say to Rachel were, "Mike's always away, but I'm here if you need anything." While I was away, he offered to assist with school functions and home repairs. I was appreciative of his assistance at the moment. I can now understand that it was all a part of his deception. Everything broke apart 6 years ago. I had been at our company's West Coast office for a week on business. It was a presentation for a big project that might get you promoted. I missed Rachel and the girls so much that I contacted her every night to tell her everything that had happened during the day. I also participated in video conferences with the girls, listening to Madison's most recent art project ideas and providing remote assistance with Ashley's math assignments. My whole family was in our living room when I got home. James was there, appearing serious, while Rachel and the girls were crying. Tension was pervasive in the air. Rachel exclaimed, "How could you do this to us?" with a look of fury in her eyes that I will never forget. James had meticulously planned his attack. He pulled out a folder that seemed to be unquestionable proof of my adultery. Intimate text exchanges, hotel receipts, and even pictures of me entering a hotel with another woman were all there. He asserted that the woman was a coworker who, feeling guilty, had told him everything. The images were modified with skill. Later, I found out that they were staged to appear suspicious and were taken at official business meetings. Although the texts were entirely false, they contained information about my travel and work schedule that could only have been known by someone with insider knowledge. James had made things appear genuine by using his position at our organization. I made a valiant effort to protect myself, but long before I entered that room, James had turned everyone against me. He had been subtly hinting at my odd behavior to Rachel for weeks. My daughters had been persuaded by him that I was behaving differently. He had even expressed his concern about my decisions to my parents. I'm still troubled by the nightmare of the next several hours. Lauren, who had always been my strongest supporter, yelled that she would never forgive me and hurled her house key at me. Even though Madison was crying so much that she was having trouble speaking, her words, "I hate you," were audible. My daughter Olivia, who used to race to me after every soccer match, was unable to even look at me. "Why did Daddy do this to us?" Ashley, who was only 12 at the time, turned to Rachel and questioned. The most agonizing response was probably from my parents. Dad, who had taught me everything I needed to know to be a decent spouse and father, and who had always been proud of me, looked at me with utter disgust. His statement, "No son of mine would do this to his family," is still ringing in my mind. You would end this divorce quickly and amicably if you still had any dignity. That evening, I was expelled with only a bag of clothing. In the weeks that followed, I made frantic efforts to establish my innocence. I spent almost all of my savings on hiring 3 different private investigators. After weeks of searching for the supposed other woman, the first private investigator found that she had moved to a different state. Despite identifying several discrepancies, the second investigator was unable to demonstrate that the hotel invoices were fakes. In fact, the third PI nearly discovered James's manipulation before abruptly and mysteriously abandoning the case. James had threatened his family. I found out later. The divorce process was harsh and swift. Rachel was furious and distraught and didn't want to interact with me. My daughters blocked my social media accounts and phone number. I only made contact through attorneys. I lost everything in 6 months, including my work, most of my friends, my home, and my family. At the office, James had been deliberately spreading accusations that I had a history of having inappropriate connections with coworkers. The stigma followed me, and clients began asking not to work with me, even though nothing was formal. I starting again after moving to a little apartment across town. The isolation was debilitating. Sometimes all I wanted was a glimpse of my girls, so I would sit in my car outside my former home. Every milestone I missed was like a stab to my heart. I couldn't get close, so I watched Lauren's law school graduation from the parking lot. I sent Madison an anonymous purchase of her favorite piece from her first art show. I cheered alone in my flat while watching Olivia's college soccer championships on the internet. I learned about Ashley's successes in the science fair from the local newspaper. However, nothing could have prepared me for Lauren's wedding's agony. Through a social media post from a common acquaintance, I became aware of it. I lost my role in my moment when I saw James escorting my daughter down the aisle in the pictures. I was in a dark place all day thinking about things I'm not proud of. At that point, I picked up my cat, Max, from the neighborhood shelter. To be honest, he saved my life more than once, and he needed someone just as much as I did. My only means of escape became work. I shifted departments, switched companies, and threw myself fully into my job. I received 2 promotions, but without my family to celebrate with, accomplishment felt meaningless. My background was unknown to the new employer, yet I was never able to build strong bonds with my coworkers. How do you justify not talking about your family, eating lunch by yourself, or going to office parties? Over the years, I made a few unsuccessful attempts at dating. I was never sure how to respond to the first question, which was always about family. How can you explain to someone that your children despise you, that your brother methodically ruined your life, and that your whole family thinks you're a cheater? Most first dates ended without a second date. Every holiday served as a reminder of my losses. Thanksgiving meant consuming just microwave meals. Christmas was spent drinking too much and viewing old home videos. My girls and my own birthdays were the worst. Because I couldn't stand to see the unopened presents in my apartment, I continued to buy them presents each year and kept them in a storage unit. Then everything changed 3 days ago. An unidentified number called me. My mother was crying. Although she refused to provide anything over the phone, she said that they had learned the truth about James's deceit. She pleaded with me to meet with them, stating that everyone wanted to make amends and was remorseful. Feeling numb, I hung up. 6 years of loneliness, suffering, and memories lost. My daughters spent 6 years growing up without their father. James lived the life he had stolen from me for 6 years. That cannot be resolved by a simple apology. I've made touch with a legal practice that focuses on defamation and family law disputes. The attorney thinks we may have a good case, particularly if my family now has proof of James's dishonesty. Reconciliation is not something I'm interested in. Justice is what I desire. I want James to be held legally responsible for ruining my life. Some may believe that my family should forgive me because I'm being too harsh. James didn't simply betray my confidence, though. My whole life was methodically ruined by him. He poisoned my girls against me, took away my fatherly position, and robbed me of years I will never get back. How can you forgive someone who denied you the opportunity to watch your kids grow up? Who caused you to miss the wedding of your daughter? Who deliberately and methodically turned your whole family against you? I'm meeting with the attorneys tomorrow to go over our alternatives. My mom asked for a meeting, but I haven't replied yet. Although I have mixed feelings about it, I would like to know how they found the truth. The harm has been done. I'll provide an update as soon as I learn more. I have to prioritize the legal issues and preserve my own emotional well-being throughout this time. Update 1. My parents just presented me with startling proof at my meeting with my legal team. These are the events of the past 2 days. It was eye-opening to meet with my lawyers. They clarified that based on the information my parents gave, James might be charged with several crimes. My mother gave me a big folder with the original, unaltered pictures, which make it obvious how James altered them. Along with bank statements demonstrating payments for fabricating hotel receipts, they also found email exchanges between James and a professional photo editing firm. During a drunken confrontation with Rachel last week, the truth was revealed in a surprising way. By declaring he didn't design all of this simply to lose her, James unintentionally made a mistake. Rachel began investigating after reading this message and discovered a hidden email account on their shared computer. Everything was in the emails. Correspondence with several individuals he hired to assist him. Complete records of his 6-year plan to ruin my life, and even early drafts of the fictitious texts he wrote. Significant progress has been made in the police investigation. James's co-conspirators, including the friend who assisted in making fictitious hotel reservations and the photo editor, have previously been interviewed. By testifying against James, these people are now assisting the authorities in the hopes of avoiding being charged themselves. James's scrupulous record-keeping is especially unsettling. On his laptop, Rachel found a password-protected journal, which she gave to my lawyers. He started planning even before my marriage to Rachel, according to the journal. He spent a lot of time writing about waiting for the right time to carry out his plan. After learning that James intimidated other co-workers and utilized resources to falsify proof in order to support his lies, my former company opened an internal inquiry. Compensation for wrongful firing is being seriously discussed, and the HR department is getting ready to issue a formal apology. The evidence is growing. Experts in forensics discovered erased documents that demonstrated he had attempted similar schemes twice previously but had not carried them out correctly. The degree of forethought is astounding. Rachel is completely assisting investigators and has filed for divorce from James. The worst thing has been discovering how he took advantage of my daughters. His journal entries describe how he poisoned them against me in a methodical manner. He would deliberately sow doubts, misrepresent my statements, and fabricate circumstances to cast me in a negative light. One of Ashley's pals was even paid by him to say they had seen me with another woman. More evidence was found during today's police search on James's office. They discovered USB disks with backup copies of his falsified evidence, several burner phones, and more counterfeit documents he hadn't yet utilized. In order to keep up his network of falsehoods, they also found a list of the persons he was blackmailing. Considering the severity and length of his offenses, my attorneys are certain that they will seek the harshest punishments possible. According to them, James might be sentenced to up to 15 years in prison and could be awarded millions of dollars in civil damages. They have recommended me to forego all communication with my family for the time being, stating that everything must go through the appropriate legal procedures. Another victim has been identified during the investigation. James planned a similar plot against his college roommate and the roommate's girlfriend 20 years earlier. This former victim got in touch with my attorneys to tell his experience after learning about my case. I'm continuing to concentrate on the court case rather than any possible family reconciliation. We're filing the civil complaint tomorrow, and the grand jury hearing is next week. Now, it's important to make sure James bears the full repercussions of his conduct. When there are noteworthy developments in the court case, I'll provide an update. Update 2, the legal process is moving more quickly than anticipated. I need to share a few significant changes that have happened since my last report. James was taken into custody at his place of employment yesterday morning. He was overheard making calls about erasing evidence, which an employee immediately reported to the police and the company's security. He attempted to remove files from his work computer as he was being arrested, but everything had already been secured by the IT department. His response to being caught was telling. He remarked, "She was supposed to be mine anyway," without refuting anything. Today, the grand jury indictment was delivered. They returned their decision in less than 2 hours since the evidence was so strong. In her 20 years of experience, the prosecutor described it as one of the most blatant instances of planned hatred she has ever witnessed. James's actual character eventually came to light during police questioning. He sobbed uncontrollably and disclosed more information about his obsession. He had apparently been surreptitiously filming Rachel for years, gathering thousands of hours of video from covert cameras in their home. This is being handled by the police as a distinct criminal surveillance case. An even more alarming discovery came from the company's internal investigation. James had been embezzling money to finance his plan. He created fictitious vendor accounts and had been embezzling money for years to cover the costs of the different individuals he employed to assist in fabricating the evidence against me. Separate charges are now being pressed by the firm. There have been conflicting responses from my daughter to these disclosures. Lauren has been going over all the evidence because she is a lawyer. We spoke directly for the first time in 6 years when she called me today. At first, she was unable to talk through her emotions. When she was able to speak, she described how James had played on everyone's anxieties and vulnerabilities in a unique way. James had offered to help sell some of her artwork, but Madison found that it was actually stashed away in a storage facility he rented. To keep her financially reliant on him, he had been taking her work and lying to her about it. She is pursuing separate theft accusations. Olivia discovered tapes of James paying her college soccer coach to bench her during crucial matches that I might have attended. He wanted to make sure that I couldn't use sports to get back in touch with her. The NCAA is currently investigating the matter on its own. Ashley's admission was the most devastating. She discovered journal entries in which James described how, prior to everything collapsing, he purposely ruined the coding project we were working on. Knowing how important that shared interest was to our relationship, he had paid someone to hack and contaminate our work. Additional evidence has been discovered during Rachel's divorce procedures. He had been concealing substantial assets, including real estate bought under false pretenses, according to their joint tax forms. Even before our divorce, the forensic accountants were able to track down money transactions to offshore accounts. The extent of James's deceit has crushed my parents. When Dad found out about the concealed cameras in their home, he also suffered a little heart attack. James had been watching every member of the family, gathering information that he could use to control them. He kept records on everyone's vulnerabilities, secrets, and intimate moments. Today, the report from the criminal psychologist was made public. According to the report, James has one of the worst cases of obsessive personality disorder and psychopathic tendencies they have ever seen. According to his notebooks, he carefully planned every aspect of the devastation of my life, viewing it as an art form. Victims from the past have kept coming forward. Similar methods from James's background have been reported by 2 other families, though they are not as complex as what he did to me. These incidents, which date back to his time in college, demonstrate a distinct pattern of worsening conduct. Given the evidence that James had established a tiny network of blackmailed people who assisted him in maintaining his deceit, the prosecutor is now attempting to bring additional organized crime charges against James. Some were people he had financially compromised, and others were other professionals he had snuck on. I've kept my distance from efforts at family reconciliation in favor of assisting in the development of the most compelling legal argument. My attorneys claim that with the overwhelming amount of evidence, James's conviction is all but certain. Now their attention is on making sure he gets the harshest punishment imaginable. Although the tale has garnered media interest, I have turned down every invitation to be interviewed. I'm still focused on pursuing justice within the judicial system rather than going public. Nevertheless, a number of James's accomplices have begun speaking with reporters, exposing the entire scope of his network of deception. Next week, following the preliminary hearing, I'll provide another update. I'm currently preparing for what is expected to be a historic case in criminal justice and family law with my legal team. The conclusions of the preliminary hearing are more important than anyone could have predicted. I wanted to hold off on sharing this update until everything was finalized. Although James entered a guilty plea to all charges, the events in the courtroom were surprising. Against the advice of his attorney, he insisted on making a public statement. He described his entire plan for 45 minutes, not with regret but with a sickening sense of pride. He expressed no remorse, calling it his masterpiece of revenge. The judge's response was extraordinary. She disregarded the usual sentence criteria after hearing James's statement, pointing to his pathological pride and obvious determination to commit another crime. In order to run each count consecutively rather than concurrently, she imposed the maximum penalty. James will be imprisoned for 25 years with no chance of release for 18 of those years. James provided fresh details about additional victims throughout his statement, going beyond the incidents we were already aware of. In other states, he had tried similar tactics against 3 other families. His crimes may result in federal prosecution, according to the FBI's interstate investigation. His offshore accounts were the most startling discovery. He had been operating a consulting business for other compulsive people, teaching them how to ruin relationships and families, the forensic accountants found out. He had customers in several different nations. Now, Interpol is involved. In her testimony, Rachel described discovering a secret chamber in their basement that was stocked with monitors and monitoring gear. In addition to monitoring their home, he had set up cameras in my office, apartment, and even my vehicle. It was military-grade surveillance technology, according to the technical expert who inspected the arrangement. Ashley, my youngest daughter, made significant progress in her analysis of James's computer systems. She discovered encrypted files using her coding expertise, demonstrating that he had been preparing to grow his scam. He had meticulous records on the families of my co-workers, ready to ruin several relationships at once if I ever came close to establishing my innocence. The company's security mechanisms were completely redesigned as a result of their analysis. They found that James had used persuasion and extortion to undermine almost every department. In his own testimony, the CEO described discovering proof that James had been selling company secrets to finance his complex schemes. As an attorney, Lauren has been assisting the prosecution in constructing cases for James's other victims. She discovered a trend that went all the way back to his high school years. He had spent more than 25 years honing his craft. He had developed a network of enablers during his life, according to her inquiry. Betrayal Shadow, an exhibition at Madison's Art Gallery, showcased pieces she produced while dealing with this experience. She openly challenged a number of James's collaborators who were there at the event without their knowledge. Video recordings of their confessions served as proof for further charges. Olivia found out that James had been following her college friends, gathering damaging material to keep them quiet. She is currently developing procedures to stop similar manipulation schemes in college athletics by collaborating with school security across the country. Our family's psychological effects have resulted in an unforeseen development. Numerous prestigious colleges are examining the case as an illustration of persistent psychological manipulation. In order to improve detection and prevention tactics for incidents like this one, research teams are examining James's techniques. A support group for families impacted by pathological liars and manipulators has been established by my parents. They have discovered 5 further instances of James interfering in the lives of other families, some of which go back decades, thanks to this network. Due to these disclosures, a number of cold cases involving questionable family splits have been reopened. The judge combined compensatory and punitive penalties and sentenced James to pay $12 million in reparations. The forensic accountants discovered that he had accumulated more than $20 million from corporate espionage and consulting, all of which have been confiscated. In the future, I have turned down every attempt at reconciliation from my relatives. The years lost are irreparable, and the damage is too great. I'm concentrating on assisting in the construction of safeguards to stop similar exploitation from happening to others. James's law is now being considered by a number of state legislatures to strengthen the penalty for planned family destruction. I keep my anonymity intact, even though the story has garnered international attention. Rather, I'm developing tools to identify patterns of systematic familial manipulation in collaboration with cybersecurity professionals. Leading the technical development, Ashley is transforming our misery into something that could potentially benefit others. My last update will be this one. Although justice has been done, some wounds never completely go away. I'm going about my life with the intention of keeping others from going through what James did to our family. I exposed my sister and fiancé's deception at the altar. The wedding they planned to destroy became their undoing. I operate a hotel at one of Boston's most prominent establishments as a 45-year-old woman. I've worked my way up from the front desk to my current position, dedicating the last 20 years of my life to this business. What began as a work to help my sister when our parents passed away has evolved into my identity, my accomplishment, and my haven in a cruel world. Creating moments, planning experiences, and making sure every visitor feels the warmth and elegance that have come to define our brand are all part of managing this hotel, not just keeping an eye on things or upholding standards. 3 years ago, we received our 5th star after I oversaw the restorations, rebrandings, and even a total reworking of the service philosophy. The employees here are like family to me. Many have been with me for more than 10 years, and they have seen me grow from a young, anxious boss to someone they respect and trust. They have helped me through the difficulties of raising my 35-year-old sister Rachel, filling in when she needed me at school functions or during those trying adolescent years when she found it hard to handle our parents' absence. Although Rachel currently works at a nearby cafe, our relationship has always gone beyond sisterhood. I was 25 years old, just starting my management training program, and suddenly in charge of a 15-year-old who had lost everything when our parents perished in that horrible tragedy. I became her best friend, mother, and sister all at once. Her welfare was my top priority in every choice I made and every promotion I sought. Our haven was the hotel. Rachel would complete her homework in my office during school breaks while conversing with the housekeeping staff and picking up French from our seasoned concierge. As she became older, she would assist at the front desk at peak times, and our frequent visitors loved her for her inherent charm. Despite the difficulties of those years, we managed to put a life together out of the pieces of our broken family. I was never interested in romance. Dating felt like an extra hassle between running the hotel and making sure Rachel had everything she needed. There were fleeting flirtations at industry gatherings and sporadic dinners with business associates, but nothing that ever seemed worth pursuing. My employees would make jokes about putting me up, but I consistently refused. I would tell them that Rachel was my child and the hotel was my husband. When 43-year-old Ethan arrived at our hotel 3 months ago, everything changed. The way he viewed everything made him stand out right away, not only because of his custom-made suit or his quiet assurance. The majority of our affluent guests were too preoccupied with their phones or their own significance to pay much attention to their surroundings. Ethan watched. He praised the delicate lighting that took me months to perfect, remarked on the vintage molding we kept throughout restorations, and pointed out the fresh flowers in the foyer. During check-in, he said, "Your attention to detail is extraordinary," his eyes looking directly into my eyes. Even though I've stayed in hotels all over the world, this one is unique. You can sense the thought that goes into each detail. Those remarks struck a chord with me because they recognized the hotel's thoughtfulness and effort in addition to its beauty. When he inquired about nearby eateries, I found myself offering not only the customary suggestions but also my own personal picks. The undiscovered treasures I came upon on late-night strolls following especially trying days. We fell into what seemed to be a natural pattern throughout his 3-night visit. After his meetings, he would come back to the lobby lounge every evening, where he was in an ideal position to strike up a discussion with me whenever I walked by. He inquired intelligently about my professional background, the hotel's past, and my future goals. Ethan appeared truly interested in every detail. In contrast to most visitors who view such discussions as merely being polite. Instead of doing the customary corporate checkout on his last morning, he left a handwritten message that read, "Your enthusiasm for the place is inspiring. How about we carry on our conversation over dinner?" He gave me his personal phone and said he understood if I wanted to keep connections professional. There's so much more I'd love to learn. I debated whether or not to text him for hours. When Rachel came into my office that afternoon, she saw that I was preoccupied and demanded to see the message. "You have to call him." More excited than I had seen her in years, she exclaimed. "When was the last time someone actually took the time to get to know you, not just your job?" Everything changed after that first dinner. Similar to my enthusiasm for hospitality, Ethan talked passionately about his work in investment banking. Just as I saw the delicate dance of managing a premium hotel, he explained complicated financial tactics in a way that made them sound like art. He listened to my mention of my parents with sincere compassion, offering his own stories of resiliency and loss. Months passed, and our bond grew faster than I should have been concerned, but Ethan made it all seem normal, even inevitable. Always keeping in mind the preferences of my employees, he would surprise me with lunch at work. He demonstrated an amazing recall of every small detail I had shared about Rachel on our weekend excursions, even swinging by to provide encouragement and inquire about her job at the cafe. He informed me, "You're different," one evening as we were strolling around the waterfront. "By now, most people in your situation would be burned out and jaded from dedicating so much of themselves to their families and jobs. However, you've managed to strike a lovely mix between professionalism and sincere friendliness. Finding someone who genuinely appreciates the importance of creating experiences for others is uncommon." 2 months into our relationship, over a private dinner at a fancy restaurant with a view of the harbor, the proposal was made. The ring was exactly what I would have picked for myself, elegant without being garish. As he knelt next to our table, Ethan talked about creating a future together while a string quartet played sweetly in the background. "When you find someone who shares your beliefs and commitment to greatness, why wait? I know this seems fast," he acknowledged. "Allow me to be a part of your universe and assist you in building something even more remarkable than what you have already accomplished." When Rachel learned that she was engaged, her reaction was intense. Tears were running down her cheeks as she gave me a hard hug. "At last," she said. "Someone deserving of you." I was genuinely moved by her excitement as she immersed herself into the wedding planning. We stayed up late talking about specifics and exchanging aspirations and wishes for the future, as if we were teenagers once more. The wedding preparations moved swiftly forward. I deserved to be the focus of attention for once in my life, so Ethan insisted on throwing a lavish celebration. He was comforting when I raised concerns about the expenses. His suggestion was to combine our resources. I saved for our honeymoon and future house, you saved for the wedding. I take it that we are now partners. Rachel insisted on handling a lot of the wedding planning so I could concentrate on managing the business. She managed the guest list, set up samples, and communicated with vendors with a level of efficiency that made me think of myself. "You've taken care of everyone else for so long," she replied. "Let me handle this for you." The hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I walked in the door, the occasional glance between Ethan and Rachel during our family dinners, and the unexpected coincidences of them running into each other when I was preoccupied with work-related emergencies are some of the indications that I chose to ignore. Everything fell apart yesterday. When Ethan hurried off to what he claimed was an urgent client meeting, he left his phone behind and came to my office to discuss final wedding plans. The notifications lit up the screen as the cell phone continued to vibrate with incoming texts. I didn't intend to pry, but I noticed a preview of a message. "My darling, I can't wait until tomorrow. She won't be aware of what struck her." Rachel was the sender. I opened the phone with shaking hands. There was no password security. He never thought I would see it, I discovered later. My world was completely upended by what I discovered. They exchanged hundreds of mails dating back months before I had even met Ethan. In an early communication, Ethan had written, "She's perfect for our plan. Hotel manager, substantial savings, no real relationship experience, plus she trusts you completely." Rachel had even more heartbreaking answers. "She has always put a lot of effort into looking after me. She never established a personal life. This will be far too simple." Everything had been planned by them. It wasn't by accident that Ethan showed up to the motel. Rachel had told him everything about me. even my favorite wines and my routine. Every chance meeting, every sincere discussion, had been meticulously orchestrated. But their affair was only one aspect of the truth. Ethan's career as an investment banker was unsuccessful. He used credit cards to purchase his luxury suits. His promises of an opulent future were false, and his tales of financial triumph were made up. I was his lifeline as he drowned in debt. Their true strategy was made clear by the messages: utilize my cash to have an extravagant wedding, then during the ceremony, shockingly disclose their affair. They would make fun of me in front of my friends, co-workers, and employees, and I would be left to bear the consequences. With what was left of my money, they would vanish. Something else caught my attention as I read through their exchanges. Notes from Ethan's legal wife, Catherine. She knew who he truly was, unlike me. Arguments concerning unpaid bills, unpaid child support, and his gambling debts filled their texts. Now as the light is rising, my workplace is covered with deep shadows. My hair and makeup crew will be here in a few hours. Rachel is meant to be present, acting as the maid of honor and a loyal sister. Another detail I discovered in their communications is that Ethan will likely be practicing his vows, which I now know were lifted from romantic films, in preparation for his role in this deception. The location, catering, and flowers for this wedding cost all of my life savings, which I have been saving for the past 20 years while raising Rachel, sending her to college, and helping her pursue her dream of owning her own cafe. However, a peculiar serenity has descended upon me as I sit here and watch the early morning light dance across the hotel lobby to which I have devoted my life. They believed they were taking advantage of me by betraying my love and confidence. They failed to remember that I wasn't naive to get to where I am now. I've managed one of Boston's most prominent hotels for 20 years, and over that time I've learned how to deal with crises, transform setbacks into opportunities, and, above all, play the long game. I have been on the phone for the past several hours, to my lawyer, who has been diligently documenting everything and preparing the required legal measures. To Catherine, who needs to know what her husband is plotting, and to the hotel security team, who have always been more than just employees to me. They are the family I selected, and they have already taken some action. Today, a very different kind of ceremony will take place in the exquisite ballroom, where I have planned many flawless weddings for other ladies. I will benefit from every detail they intend to use against me. Everything will go exactly as planned, just not in the way they had hoped. This includes the 300 visitors, the costly decor, and the meticulously scheduled timing. I get a little depressed when I see the bridal gown hanging in my workplace because of the dreams it symbolized. However, such fantasies were based on false information. And I've always valued harsh realities over lovely lies. In front of everyone I know and admire, Rachel and Ethan intended to make a scene that would stick in my memory. Their goal was to make my wedding day a grand event. I've worked my entire career planning flawless events, and this one won't be any different. Things won't go as planned for Ethan and Rachel tomorrow. They're going to have exactly what they wanted, a wedding to remember. After all, I've learned one important lesson in my 20 years of hotel management: although the client isn't always right, they always receive what they are entitled to. The city is now painted in tones of gold as the sun has fully risen. Time to get ready for the once-in-a-lifetime performance. They believed they were the show's directors, but they are going to find out who actually controls this establishment. In contrast to them, I never let my audience down. Update. This morning, Catherine showed up at my hotel office. She produced a stack of financial paperwork, including evidence of Ethan's debts, unpaid child support, and the loans he had taken out using their shared assets as security. She was a composed woman in her early 40s with a calm intensity that mirrored mine. She put the documents on my desk and added, "He's been doing this for years." Spread elaborate stories about his wealth, targeting successful women. But this is the first time he's worked with an accomplice. I mentioned Rachel's involvement, and her voice caught a little. The following hour was devoted to going over messages and contrasting timings. The holes in my discovery were filled by Catherine's record. Ethan had a recurring pattern of extravagant credit card purchases, seducing women, and then vanishing with their money. Rachel's involvement, which gave his scam more legitimacy, was the only thing that was different this time. After that, my lawyer showed up and went over everything we had collected. "This isn't just fraud," she clarified. She has already prepared emergency petitions to freeze accounts and stop any attempts to transfer funds, saying, "It's a conspiracy. And with the evidence of their planned public humiliation, we can add emotional distress to the charges." Both of them continued to send messages throughout the morning. Rachel texted to say that she was happy to pick up the flowers. Fake concern filled Ethan's voice as he called twice to discuss last-minute plans. Every interaction seemed like a new betrayal when I didn't respond, but I remained silent. A discreet briefing has been given to the hotel staff. The purpose of the security cameras is to record everything. Disguised as service personnel, police officers have been placed subtly throughout the hotel. They are awaiting my cue, prepared to take action as soon as the fraud evidence is made public. Catherine went into further detail about their marriage, including how Ethan would go missing for months at a time and then come back with long-winded justifications and vows to reform. For years, she has been accumulating evidence in anticipation of the ideal time to take action. It was like giving her the last puzzle piece she had been attempting to complete when I contacted her last night. The cosmetics artist set up in my own suite an hour ago. In an apparent attempt to coordinate with Ethan for their big performance, Rachel texted that she would be late. A lovely reminder of how quickly fantasies may be turned into a weapon is the bridal gown hanging, ready. When Ethan's parents first arrived, they had no idea what their son really was. The reporters I reached out to pretend to be wedding photographers, eager to capture every moment. Ethan will not be aware of Catherine's presence until the ideal time, as she will be seated in the front row. The required paperwork has been prepared by her lawyer for prompt action. The frequency of Rachel's messages is increasing, and there is a tinge of anxiety in them. "Are you all right?" she inquires. "You seem distant." If it weren't so terrible, the irony of her worry would be funny. This is the result of 20 years of sisterhood. Though not for the purpose they intended, the location is turning into the ideal stage. Instead, every detail they planned to embarrass me would double as the background for their publicity. When I look at my reflection in the office window, I see someone who has spent decades controlling chaos rather than a victim. They believed they were planning the ideal scam, but they would soon discover who is actually in charge of this operation. Update 1. Just now, the makeup artist completed her job. This isn't the bridal preparation I had envisioned, and every brushstroke serves as a reminder. My mirror displays expertly done makeup and flawless contouring. They expect me to be a blushing bride, and I look just that. When Rachel did show up, she rushed into the bridal room with an armful of flowers and that phony smile that I can now see clearly. She embraced me with what seemed like real warmth and said, "You look stunning." How long has she been this skilled at acting? As I observed her in the glass, she started to fiddle with my veil and talk about last-minute things. As her eyes met mine in the mirror, she remarked, "It's unbelievable that my big sister is finally getting married. You deserve this happiness for everything you've done for me." If it weren't so tragic, her performance as bravado would be stunning. All morning, Ethan has been sending texts that are meticulously crafted to keep up his facade until the very end, such as, "Can't wait to see you, love," and "just a few more hours until forever begins." According to his most recent communication, his parents are excited to have me join their family. The hotel's huge ballroom has been renovated just as planned, with 300 chairs precisely placed, crystal chandeliers glittering, and white roses all over the place. Only a few members of my team are aware of what is actually going to happen, but they work quickly through the preparations. Ethan won't notice Catherine until it's too late because she is already positioned, sitting quietly in a corner. A few minutes earlier, her lawyer showed up with paperwork. The police officers who are pretending to be employees have verified their identities. Rachel never stops attempting to spend meaningful time with me. "Do you recall the time we spent planning your wedding as children?" As she adjusted my clothing, she inquired. She is correct in one regard, this will undoubtedly be more remembered than those childhood fantasies. This is even better than anything we imagined. I can see visitors coming in through the window of the suite, acquaintances I've known for decades, co-workers from the hotel business, and even some of my frequent visitors who have grown to be like family. They're all decked out in their best attire, anticipating a love celebration. Rather, they will witness a very other event. In the foyer, Ethan's parents are welcoming visitors, and his father is gushing over his son's prosperous investing business. Their world will soon fall apart just as thoroughly as mine did yesterday. The string quartet is getting ready and rehearsing in the wedding march, which will never come to its customary end. I just received confirmation from my lawyer that everything is set up. Legally, as soon as Ethan and Rachel take action, a series of unanticipated events will begin. Rachel continues to be the loyal sister by assisting me with my sneakers. She squeezed my hand and asked, "Are you nervous?" I forced a tiny grin, realizing how accurate she was about the gravity of what was about to happen. It's normal to be quiet before such a big moment. We have 30 minutes till the ceremony starts, according to the wedding coordinator's recent signal. Rachel excused herself to inquire about a few things, most likely to finalize plans with Ethan. Today, I'm by myself in the bridal suite, surrounded by the mementos of what ought to have been the most joyous day of my life. They'll discover in half an hour how justified their dread of my attention to detail was. Update 3. I started walking down the aisle as the wedding march got underway. Ethan played his role as the successful, attractive groom filled with emotion as he stood at the altar. The scenario briefly resembled the fairy tale conclusion they had intended to ruin. Rachel, still wearing her maid of honor outfit, came forward as I was halfway to the altar. She said, "I'm sorry, but I can't let this continue." Her voice echoing over the flawless acoustics of the ballroom. "Ethan and I are in love. I'm carrying his child." The audience's gasp was precisely what they had hoped for. Just as expected, Ethan's face changed from that of a stunned groom to that of a regretful lover. I recognized that they had practiced this moment. Their spectacular surprise had been meticulously arranged. Ethan said, walking over to me, "Grace, you've been nice to us, but Rachel and I—" My voice was clear and calm when I interrupted. I motioned toward the rear of the room, and the big screens that had been used for wedding pictures came to life. "Let me handle the announcements from here." The meticulous preparation, the premeditated deception, the jokes about my confidence, and their planned betrayal were all visible in magnified form. Catherine got up from her chair and walked slowly in the direction of the altar. Ethan's expression turned pale. She said, "Hello, darling," her voice piercing the startled quiet. "Surprised to see your wife here?" There was another round of gasps when the word wife reverberated around the ballroom. The policemen who had been pretending to be employees took their places. With paperwork in hand, my attorney came forward. Financial information started to slide on the screens, the theft, the fraud, the complex strategy they had devised. "Ethan Thompson," declared the lead detective, "you are being held on charges of grand theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Miss Rachel Anderson, please remain where you are." Rachel's expression fell flat. The self-assured smile gave way to fear. She reached for me and pleaded, "Grace, please. You don't understand. He said that once we had your money, we'd be together." Finally expressing my rage, I said, "Once you had my money? You'd run away together, start a new life with the savings I earned while raising you." When Ethan attempted to flee, the hotel security guards were prepared. All the exits were closed. His father got up and demanded answers. He received copies of the evidence, his son's dishonest past and the list of deceived women, instead of replies. Ethan's assets were frozen and divorce papers were served to him by Catherine's lawyer. As the cops carried Ethan away in handcuffs, the visitors watched in stunned silence. Rachel stayed motionless, tears running down her cheeks. She muttered, "What's going to happen to me?" I said icily, "That depends on the district attorney." She was escorted out of the ballroom by 2 officers. The click of handcuffs marked the end of 20 years of sisterhood. My hotel personnel navigated the turmoil with efficiency, guiding guests to the reception area. Surrounded by the flowers and decorations intended for a completely other event, I found myself feeling oddly at ease as I stood in the empty ballroom afterwards. Even while the betrayal still hurt, it was somewhat satisfying to see their well-thought-out strategy fall apart. Catherine's case appeared strong, and Rachel was assisting the prosecution. There would be several courtrooms where justice will be served. A month has passed since the wedding that never happened, because both Ethan and Rachel decided to collaborate with prosecutors after realizing the strength of the evidence against them. The court case proceeded more quickly than anticipated. I was given $50,000 in damages from Ethan by the court, but getting it will be a completely different story. The judge's remarks regarding their plan's premeditation and the breach of family trust were especially severe. Ethan is currently facing criminal charges in 2 additional states, and Catherine's plea for retroactive child support was also successful. Throughout the proceedings, Rachel made multiple attempts to get in touch with me. "I know I can never make this right," she said in one message, "but please, you're the only family I have." I erased all of her messages without answering. The sister I thought I knew, the one I reared, never existed. According to my lawyer, Rachel may be able to avoid jail time by cooperating with the prosecution, but she will probably still be subject to probation and required reparation payments. She used to talk about wanting me to be an aunt someday, so the fact that she is still carrying Ethan's child feels like a cruel joke. Once more, although in a different way, the hotel has turned into my haven. I was really struck by the loyalty of my workers during the entire event. They have surrounded me with a protective circle, answering phones, rerouting intruders, and making sure I can concentrate on what I do best, managing this establishment. Quickly, word got out about the failed wedding and the arrests that followed in the hotel business. Unexpectedly, it has improved rather than harmed my reputation. "Takes real strength to handle that kind of betrayal with such dignity," said one of my frequent clients. In a long letter, Ethan's parents expressed their sadness and embarrassment. I turned down their offer to pay for the wedding. Money was never the point of this. It has to do with family and trust. I've already transformed the intended improvements for the honeymoon room into a brand new corporate conference space. I've kept in touch with Catherine, exchanging details on Ethan's current legal issues and offering support for one another's court challenges. She has turned into a surprising ally who genuinely recognizes the extent of his dishonesty. We're both better off knowing the truth, she stated to me, no matter how much it hurts. I still have the bridal gown hanging in my wardrobe. Something prevents me from making the final decision to donate it, even though I should probably. Perhaps it serves as a reminder of what I learned about my own strength rather than what I lost. The woman who purchased that outfit was incredibly naive in her trust. Now the owner, a woman, is aware of this. I've kept Rachel's old room ready for her over the years, and her belongings are still there. I finally packed everything into boxes yesterday and gave a storage firm a call. It will be held for 30 days. I forwarded the information to her via my attorney. Anything left over after that will be donated. The betrayal itself is no longer the most difficult aspect. It's recognizing how poisoned 20 years of recollections have become. Was Rachel constantly playing a part, waiting for the appropriate moment, or was every Christmas picture, milestone celebrated and late-night chat with her genuine? I've returned to my job, finding solace in the well-known routines of hotel management. I'm putting all of my energy into new initiatives and enhancements, and my staff has observed that I'm more focused than ever. I was invited to give a presentation on crisis management at a hotel management conference last week. I hardly recognized Rachel's handwriting when I looked at her signature on the settlement documents this morning. On the other hand, I hardly recognized her anymore. With a few pen strokes, 20 years of sisterhood came to an end. I have lost my anger. Simply fed up with bearing the consequences of what transpired. My true family, my employees and devoted customers, need me, and the hotel needs me. And I simply have to look after myself for the first time in 20 years. I occasionally find myself thinking about Rachel and the unborn kid she is carrying late at night in my office. I know I made the correct decision though, when I think back on the messages I saw, the premeditated betrayal, and the years of deceit. After burning, certain bridges ought to remain ashes. My wife divorced me, went on vacation with her affair partner. Thinking she'd get my parents' trust fund, but instead, she got a lawsuit. Hello, I'm Aaron, a 30-meter person. And I'm just going to try to write everything down here. I've known my pals have been friends with me my entire life because they claim that I'm the trust fund baby. They always attempted to get close to me, assuming I would be sponsoring alcohol at parties and holding extravagant parties all over the world. But every time I proved to be nothing like that, they abandoned me. My parents do have a sizable trust fund for me, but I'm aware of how hard they have worked to earn it. I am aware that money wasn't created overnight and that my father's business may be destroyed by a single error. I therefore put a lot of effort into building on what my father began every single day. But I came so close to making that one error recently. I didn't date anyone while I was in college, except for Ashley, my wife, the love of my life, and 28F. I'm not the kind to casually date or hook up with women. My goal was to date in order to get married. But I drew all the wrong kinds of company when word got out about my parents' wealth. You know, having money makes you popular and makes others want to live off of you. I did occasionally sponsor alcohol and lend money to some of my friends, but nothing extravagant. Nothing that one would anticipate from a trust fund baby. I think it's okay to do things in moderation. In fact, it's crucial because you have to be a member of society. I therefore made an effort to be liked by everyone, although I hardly ever trusted anyone. I met Ashley at my graduation celebration. I struck up a conversation with her informally as she didn't seem to know me. We hit it off right away. After exchanging phone numbers, I took her to McDonald's for our first date. We had an incredible time. I fell in love and she didn't seem to mind that our first date wasn't particularly spectacular. My first love in life was Ashley. She wasn't dull and didn't seem to be making a concerted effort to win my approval. She was just being herself. She was also incredibly intelligent. I seemed to obtain an image that was beyond my budget while I was with her, and I felt normal. She didn't seem surprised at all when I took her to meet my parents after we had been dating for a month. She seems to agree that I was wealthy and impartial. That gave me hope that she wasn't at all put off by my money. She probably wasn't surprised because that was part of her strategy from the beginning, but I didn't realize that at the time. Winning me over was a well-planned tactic because she was well aware of who I was and that I was not seeing anyone. When she met with my parents, she exuded elegance. I fell deeply in love with her because she was so charming. The first female I ever took home was her. My parents were ecstatic about me. She never took any expensive presents from me during the year we dated. The fact that we weren't yet married was the only explanation for her refusal. After a year, I asked her to marry me. She was my parents' ultimate sweetheart. Since she wanted to work to increase our wealth, she told my parents that she only had one request and that they never asked her to quit her job. My mother gave her a hug and expressed their happiness that I had found a wife who was so encouraging. Ashley earned a respectable salary while working for an IT company. My parents threw a party for our second anniversary. They declared their intention to offer Ashley a present and suggested adding her name as a beneficiary in addition to mine. They introduced Rob, the trustee, and Ashley to everyone else. He worked as an accountant for the business that managed the investments and money's legalities. Rob had a daughter and was married. His spouse practiced law at the same firm. My wife's name was listed as one of the beneficiaries, and everything was handled. Ashley had a great relationship with my parents and always tried her hardest to make them happy. As part of her career, she also traveled and worked a lot. Later on, I discovered that whenever my parents hosted a party, she would travel with her affair partner. She constantly wanted to go and looked beautiful. Numerous times during these parties, I witnessed her conversing with Rob in a corner while blushing from the wine she was holding and laughing a bit too much. And even though I was naive and infatuated, I never once considered the possibility that she might be having an affair with Rob. However, these two had been having an affair behind my back the entire time. In retrospect, Ashley surprised me. She is a true professional actor. The idea of ever suspecting her felt sacrilegious because of how beautifully she treated each of us. She was merely waiting though. My parents died within 6 months of one another, about 7 years into our marriage. It was simply too hard to manage all the emotions and still keep the business operating, so I threw myself fully into my profession. Ashley began revealing her actual self for the first time in years at that point. She remained aloof after the funeral. I attempted to give her space since I believed she might be coping with her grief in her own manner. She didn't inquire about my well-being or mention anything about the death of my parents. I found that odd. But I also subconsciously chastised myself for not being able to express my feelings. It took me about 2 weeks before I made the decision to leave work early and speak with Ashley about it. On the way back, I purchased a bunch of pink roses. Since I had my own key, I opened the door and confronted Rob. I asked him if he had come to discuss the trust or something since I was perplexed. Ashley emerged with 2 luggage from behind him. That's when I realized Rob had 2 suitcases too. "Oh dang," Ashley remarked, glancing at me. "I meant to do this quietly. I was going to leave you a note to inform you that I'm moving out, but I suppose we'll have to do it in person now. I'm leaving you, all right?" "Yes, you heard correctly. And yes, after we get back from our trip to Italy, I'll be moving in with Rob. Your parents ensured that I would receive sufficient funds to cover it. We're divorcing then. Rob will now file for divorce as well. Don't look like a helpless puppy now. Are those flowers for me?" "Thank you. I'll take them. Goodbye." Before I could ask her to wait, they had already left. There was silence after I heard the motor revving up. My wife of 8 years abruptly left me. Is the phrase, "the world crashing down in front of you," familiar to you? Well, that sums up my feelings the best. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. I kept the blinds closed. Cup noodles and chilled meals were my only sources of sustenance. I was afraid of the silence, so I never switched off the TV. I had no desire to take a bath. Someone rang the doorbell on the 3rd day. I assumed they would eventually go if I didn't answer the door, but that didn't happen. Whoever it was pressed the bell longer and harder each time it rang. The ringing continued for several minutes after that. Someone was now hammering on the door. "I know you're in there, open up right now," a woman's voice said. "I won't go until I have a little conversation with you." I assumed it was Ashley, but then I recalled that she and Rob were on vacation in Italy. I felt a new surge of melancholy at the concept. I dragged myself out of bed and began opening the door because the banging and knocking wouldn't stop. A woman with red hair wearing a 2-piece suit was waiting for me when I opened the door. It appeared as though she would eat my head off. "Your wife fled with my husband," she remarked. "It won't assist anyone to sit here and be a wimp. In 15 minutes, get up, take a bath, and enter the living room. We have a lot to discuss." As soon as I didn't answer, she opened the door, met my eyes and said, "You stink." "Okay, Mom," I said before I went to the restroom. "I heard that," she yelled back. I laughed in spite of themselves. After my bath, I felt somewhat human again, and the living room looked immaculate when I got back. The kitchen was no exception. Rob's wife, Sandra, gave her introduction. She explained that she had been attempting to contact me at my workplace for the past 2 days but was unable to do so, so she ultimately made the decision to come to my house. She was serious. What she was telling me was unbelievable. Sandra claimed that, similar to me, she was unaware that Rob was unfaithful to her. Only 2 days ago, When he left the house and promised to send his assistant to get the rest of his belongings, did she find out? Her world was broken, just like mine was, but she didn't mope about it. She began to dig. She started by looking through Rob's laptop. There, he kept his work belongings, but he was hooked onto Facebook. She quickly combed through his conversations to discover who he was having an affair with. She swooped like a hawk once she was certain. She was very certain that Rob was withdrawing funds for his personal purposes after reviewing all of the documents pertaining to my trust fund. He was being helped by one of the beneficiaries, who was none other than Ashley, so it began little enough to go unnoticed, but ultimately he had grown confident and reckless. Although she wasn't lying, I kind of wanted she was. Sandra was prepared to destroy them because she had all the evidence. Sandra said, "I have a little daughter." While I was still unsure. "I'll get every last dime out of Rob, and I'll completely destroy Ashley. What you believe doesn't matter to me. I only wanted to let you know. If you do not wish to participate, you're under no obligation to do so." She exuded confidence and determination, and I knew from a way that I could trust her. I was on board then. We exchanged handshakes. We were working on a scheme that would cost my ex-wife a lot of money while she was on vacation in Italy. Rob and Ashley had returned from their 10-day vacation in Italy. Sandra and I wanted to see how they would react when the penny dropped, so we waited for their call. I had been at work on a Monday when Ashley called. She went on a tirade as soon as I answered. "What on earth is going on? What does Rob mean when he says we're having problems? Where's my money too?" "You mean the money from my parents that Rob used to buy you presents and most likely the apartment you moved into," I said. "I hope my lawyer got back to you. It's Rob's wife Sandra, who also happens to be employed at the company." Before she could utter another thing, I hung up and told her I had to leave. That day, Ashley was waiting outside when I left work. She blocked my path as I proceeded toward my car, pretending not to notice her. I had known her for a long time, but I had never seen her so upset by anything. She requested me to explain things to her since she seemed to be having trouble understanding Rob's nervous account of what happened and wanted to hear it from me in simple terms. I informed her that I had learned about the divorce petition from her attorney. The only difference was that she would not receive a single dime. The expression on her face, oh boy. She never would have imagined that this would be taking place. I saw the panic rising within her. After experiencing a moment of cruel pleasure, I felt a great deal of guilt for placing her in this predicament. It's hard to see someone you care about suffer, and I still loved her. I had to leave as soon as possible to avoid being manipulated by her. I brushed her aside and headed for my car. From behind me I heard her yelling. She was requesting that I stop. "How could you do this to me?" was the final thing I heard before getting into the car. I wanted to lash out and tell her that I could ask her the same stupid question because I felt like I was being stabbed. Instead though, I got into my car and left. In my rear-view mirror, I could see her, completely confused, taking care of the automobile. Rob, meantime, had received notification that he would be leaving the organization. He was damaging the company's reputation, and it seems that word had gotten out. Since many customers had contacted to request contract termination, firing Rob was the greatest damage control measure the company could take. Sandra arranged for the best counsel because she had several friends who were lawyers. She was confident that she would win the lawsuit and be granted custody. As I drove home, Sandra was providing me with all of these information. I felt a lot lighter. I wrote this up after returning home. I wanted to let out my frustration after my encounter with Ashley. Is Ashley being treated too harshly, in your opinion? Update 1. Hello to everybody. I have an update now. A week has passed. I appreciate you helping me and getting me back up when I was feeling quite lost. I showed him this Reddit article during our first therapy appointment. It's a good coping mechanism, he said. According to him, it's normal to mourn the person you lost, in this case, Ashley, so it makes sense that I would feel extremely overwhelmed once I revealed the truth. I'll try to give you all a summary of what transpired this week. Ashley gave me another call. Her voice was softer this time. She spoke in a muffled voice, as if she had been sobbing. I was asked if I had eaten dinner. "Do you want me to come over and cook it for you?" she said after I declined. I was surprised. She stated she would be at my house in 30 minutes, so I assumed she interpreted my silence as a yes. No, you won't," I responded, finally finding my voice. "Are you serious? You want to come here, make me supper and set up a playhouse after what you did?" "No, darling," she said. "We can talk, even though I know things haven't been well." At the time, I was going crazy. At this moment, I believe I yelled, "Bad? Do you think what you did was bad? Simply awful? It was evil. It was self-centered and cruel. You're going to hell with it. I would never again want to see your face. What the devil is wrong with you? I felt like throwing up at the next thing she uttered. I should stop overreacting, she said. For me, I believe it marked a turning point. At this time, I saw her true self, a woman who didn't regret her acts at all and would do it all over again in a heartbeat, despite the remorse I had been feeling for hurting her. The call was a trap, an attempt to control me. She was unaware of my realization and continued to complain about how I was portraying her in the lawsuit as a gold digger, even though she was actually making money and had a job. I wanted to let her know that I had paid off all of her student loans, so if she was now living nicely, it was thanks to my family and me. She claimed that the only reason she wanted to visit was because she believed we should have a conversation and reconcile, and that I should drop my case since it was useless. It was impossible for me to refrain from asking, "What about Rob?" She claimed that Rob was simply different and that she was having an affair with him because he made her boring existence interesting. She then began accusing me of never being there for her and of being away on business. She claimed that she had a passionate romance with Rob, whereas I lacked it greatly. I was suing her rather than offering her an apology. By this time, I was certain she was attempting to bleed my ear. She could have discussed it with me, or we could have attended marriage counseling, I informed her, if she had been experiencing so many issues. The answer was never cheating. She started to insist on coming over and change the subject. After hanging up, I dialed Sandra. I explained what had transpired to her. Sandra requested that I call her back and invite her over. "I will also come over," she responded. She requested me to comply in order to find out her true intentions. I ended my conversation with Sandra and dialed Ashley instead. When she picked up, she sounded so arrogant. She claimed she will be there in 30 minutes and that she knew I would come around. Sandra arrived before Ashley did. There was not enough time for her to explain her plan, and I was unaware of it. She wanted me to make Ashley sit in the dining room after she went inside. Sandra stated that she would appear in this play in a special capacity. About 40 minutes later, Ashley arrived, and it was clear that she had tried to appear presentable. She did look nice. She entered, gave me a kiss and started to go to the bedroom where Sandra was. I halted her and requested that she take a seat in the dining room. "But why, sweetheart?" She pouted as she turned to face me. "Was it easy for me to forfeit my rights? Was your affection so feeble? Baby, will you not stand up for us?" It was then that Sandra emerged from the bedroom. Ashley muttered something along the lines of, "What the hell?" as she appeared too astonished to talk. Finally, we meet the woman who is dating my useless husband Rob the cheater," Sandra stated with a smirk to Ashley. "You did indeed forfeit your right to the bedroom, I see." Ashley turned to face me and said, "How could you so simply replace me? After stealing all of my joy, you're having an affair with Rob's wife. We owe a lot of money, and now we won't even receive the money from the trust fund. Rob is currently unemployed, and it's unclear who released the information. I could also lose my job. You're incredibly self-centered." "What do you mean we have debts?" Sandra interrupted. "Is it comparable to a joint loan? Are you withdrawing the money and assisting Rob and Miss BL or what?" Ashley swung her around. "Then absolutely, I was. Rob has had my support from the beginning. Do you believe he could have organized such a thing himself? Of course I aided him. Not like you, wicked witch. You have treated him in a condescending manner. He chose me over you for that reason. Leave this place. When your husband is unemployed, how are you able to be here? Why in the world don't you support him and make a statement in his favor?" After giving me a charming smile, Sandra informed me that she believed I should send Ashley home. The task was completed. After receiving the signal, I held the door open for Ashley. Ashley hurled a barrage of insults at us as she walked out. What just happened?" I asked Sandra as she was leaving. Sandra winked at me after pressing stop on a tape. "We got a confession, Aaron," she exclaimed with excitement, her eyes gleaming. "We'll destroy them." She heard me say, "I'm not letting both of them escape. That's Sandra for you, my friends. She is cruel and cunning. I would be afraid of her if I were Rob and Ashley. She simply performs her job too well." Sandra admitted before leaving that she was the one who had clearly leaked the Rob news. I informed her that I was picking up on her intelligence and that I had at least deduced that she was involved. "I'll keep you guys informed." At last, the game is starting. Update 2. I'm back with an update, which I think is a bit early, but I couldn't wait to share it with you all. Sandra is an incredibly vicious murderer. She explained everything in detail and submitted the recording to Ashley's employer. In the note, She stated that someone who would go to such efforts to deceive her loved ones wasn't a trustworthy employee and would likely attempt to steal money from them if she saw a chance. Sandra also had a long-standing friendship with one of Ashley's business colleagues. Sandra's buddy quickly withdrew from a transaction she was about to support, claiming that she had doubts about the reliability of several team members. The agreement was therefore off the table. When Ashley's supervisor heard the news, he was completely distraught. To salvage the deal, they acted quickly and dismissed the offending individual. That's all. My ex-wife was abruptly let go from the corporation. Both of them are currently unemployed and in debt. Sandra informed me that she had been receiving constant calls from Rob. He began messaging her when she didn't answer. She disabled his number and urged him to stop bothering her. I'm having a great time right now. According to my therapist, who I've been seeing, Ashley ought to serve as a case study on narcissism. That was kind of amusing, lol. After a long time, I burst out laughing. In any case, I'll update you all. Oh, did I mention that Rob had been arrested? Ashley apparently had to take money out of her savings account to cover his bail. Serve them well, lol. For now, goodbye. Update 3. Sandra gave me a call this morning. She was enraged. Rob apparently rang her doorbell intoxicatedly early in the morning and continued to abuse her. The entire incident was captured on her security camera. He tried breaking in when Sandra begged him to leave. Only after Sandra threatened to call the police did he go. The worst part of the entire situation was that Sandra and Rob's daughter, Emily, woke up as a result of all the noise. She witnessed the events and is now traumatized. Children typically suffer after divorce, but witnessing your father go drunk on your doorstep, yelling at your mother, and attempting to break into the house is an entirely different matter. Since then, Emily has refused to leave her room. Sandra needed to go to the police station to file a restraining order, so she asked if I could come over. At such short notice, she was unable to hire a babysitter. I assured her I didn't mind and asked them to call me at work if they needed anything. Sandra went out the door as soon as I arrived. Since Emily hadn't even had breakfast, she advised me to offer her some food if she came out. I went to knock on Emily's room as soon as Sandra left. I got a pin and shattered the lock when no one answered. I have no idea why, but I was feeling suspicious. I was contemplating the worst-case situations during the stillness. I was unable to remain motionless while the youngster was in pain. There was no one in the room when I rushed in, and I was breathing heavily. Then I noticed a slight movement. Emily was concealed beneath the bed. With the exception of her hair, the 3 or 4-year-old daughter looked exactly like her mother and was staring at me with fear in her eyes. She stammered in terror and managed to ask me if Rob had sent me and if I was her dad's buddy. I got down on my knees and said hello. I explained to her that I was actually her mom's friend rather than her father. At that, she appeared to calm down a little. She then began to stare out the window nervously and inquired as to whether her father had left. Since her mother was like a tigress and would do everything in her power to protect her cub, I answered that he was. At that point, she broke down in tears and confided in me about her fear that Rob would break in and harm her mother. I promised her I would never allow that to occur. In addition to losing a parent, this innocent child had witnessed what a terrible monster her father was, and I felt terrible for her. I persuaded her to play her favorite Disney film and come out. I served her some lasagna that I had warmed up. Sandra tells me that Emily was sleeping well on my chest and drooling into her favorite pillow when she returned. Emily clung to my legs and wouldn't let me go that evening when I was ready to go. She sobbed repeatedly before finally admitting that she was afraid Rob would reappear and leave her mother alone. When Sandra rolled her eyes at me, I stopped joking that her mother didn't need to be protected. I stayed the night because I knew it would be very hard to explain a restraining order to a youngster. Emily and I both slept soundly. Sandra served us delicious pancakes the following morning, and I left right away for work. That night, Emily made me swear that I would return to sleep at their place. Well, I suppose that's my life at the moment. Sandra's place is where I have to stay at night. Sandra has yet to find a good child psychologist, despite her best efforts. I'll give you all an update following the initial hearing. Goodbye. Update 4. Well, phew, I guess I haven't given you guys any updates in a while. The initial hearing has concluded. This is what a lay person like me has discovered. Rob and Ashley are completely cooked. Yes, brother, I do mean it. They're barbecue cooked. We have so much damning evidence against them that the matter is really closed. However, given the nature of courts, it is likely to take a long time. Sandra thinks it won't take more than 6 months. She also thinks that they will both be going to jail. Rob and Ashley will definitely not receive any compensation for the divorce. Rob is also required to pay child support. Rob and Ashley were unsuccessful in their employment search. I've learned that Rob works as a janitor at a local club. We witnessed Rob being assaulted by some loan sharks outside the court. For that man, things are looking bleak. He's done. He rushed to Sandra when he saw her outside the court and collapsed at her feet. We now know better, yet he persisted in pleading with her to take him back. According to Sandra's attorney, Rob won't even be granted visitation rights because the case is so strongly in Sandra's favor. I discovered my fiancé and my sister in bed together during my engagement party, and my parents asked me to stay silent to protect her reputation. I am a tenured professor at a large northeastern university, 42F. Since I'm still processing what happened at my wedding and, to be honest, I need some perspective, I need to explain what happened. Let me first briefly explain the dynamics of my family. Lisa, 38F, my younger sister, has always been our parents' favorite. Lisa entered the media industry and became a local TV personality, while I spent years conducting research and writing articles for academic purposes. Our parents were always telling me how successful and gregarious Lisa was. The partiality was brutally evident when I was growing up. Our parents paid top bucks for Lisa to enroll in theatrical classes. I was told to use what we had when I required equipment for my science projects. All our lives, this trend persisted. The only person who really encouraged me to pursue my academic goals was my dad's mother, my grandma Martha. Elena, you have a gift in your mind, she would often tell me. Don't allow someone to make you less bright. While my parents were occupied watching one of Lisa's TV segments, she joined me in celebrating the publication of my first research paper in a famous magazine. After putting a lot of effort into my job, I became one of the youngest female professors in my field. Even though it wasn't the life my parents had in mind, I created a life of which I was proud. Then, during an academic meeting, I met David, 44M. He was pleasant, intelligent, and seemed to have a unique understanding of me. After 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic when David proposed. How did my folks respond? Well, at least you won't be alone with your books anymore. Even more telling was Lisa's response. With the same patronizing grin she had had since she was a young girl, she exclaimed, "At last. I was concerned that you wouldn't meet someone who could cope with your intensity." The celebration of my engagement took place at my parents' home. Lisa insisted on assisting with the arrangements, but her idea of assistance mainly consisted of offering suggestions that were more in line with her preferences and criticizing my selections. She began to visit our home regularly, particularly during my work hours. I assumed she was simply acting in her typical domineering manner. In retrospect, there were a lot of warning signs that I decided to overlook. The way Lisa would enter a room and David's gaze would follow her. How she would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Lisa started coming to our neighborhood at the same time that David was spending more and more late nights at the lab. I recall the final instance of normalcy before things went awry. I was standing in the bedroom from my early years, examining old pictures hanging on the wall. Several glitzy photos of Lisa were hidden below my graduation photo. It seemed appropriate, a fitting illustration of my role inside the family. However, what followed? Things took an unexpected turn at that point. Downstairs, the engagement celebration was in full force, and I became aware that I hadn't seen David in a while. I told myself he was probably just making a work call, so I went upstairs to look for him. I heard noises coming from my former bedroom at that moment. My hand was motionless on the doorknob while I stood there for a while. I opened the door even though I had a sneaking suspicion of what I would discover. David and Lisa were entangled on the bed where I grew up. I had spent many evenings studying for my PhD qualifications in the same bed. Lisa lacked even the grace to display embarrassment. "Oh, Elena, you should have known," she continued with that same condescending grin. "I always manage to achieve what I desire." The worst thing. Richard, 40M, a prosperous real estate developer, was Lisa's husband. While his wife ruined my engagement, he was gone on business, most likely closing another $1 million deal. I can't really recall what transpired next. In some way, my legs carried me down the hallway as I backed out of the room. David's voice carried that false sincerity I now knew all too well as he called after me, "Elena, hold on. It isn't what you believe." However, it was precisely what I had assumed. Before my parents caught me, I had already gone halfway down the steps. My expression must have told them everything. "Elena, sweetie, please don't make a scene," was my mother's initial statement. "Consider your sister's union. The marriage of my sister. Not the broken engagement I had. My heart isn't broken. The marriage of my sister." With a low, anxious voice, Dad joined in. "You are aware of Richard's fidelity issues. A prenuptial agreement exists. She might lose everything. Elena, please consider the impact this would have on the family." The family. The same family that had prioritized Lisa's needs at all times. The same family that had disregarded my accomplishments, disparaged my decisions, and now demanded that I shield their golden kid from the repercussions of her own behavior. I passed them and entered the crowded gathering. When I walked in, the room fell silent. They must have noticed something in my face. David came up the stairs, buttoning his shirt hurriedly. Her flawless makeup was a little smudged a few moments later. My voice was unusually steady as I continued. I apologize, but the engagement is off. I have to go, but please enjoy the food and beverages. Whispers and gasps began instantly. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shoes clicking quickly on the floor, but I continued. I went outside to my car after grabbing my keys. David was beckoning me, demanding an opportunity to clarify. Mom was crying for commitment to the family. Lisa watched from the doorway with the same angry smile, strangely mute. I packed up everything that belonged to David, including his priceless collection of rare scientific papers, books, and clothes, and drove directly home. Everything was placed in boxes. After renting a storage container and dropping off his items, I sent him the address and code to get entry. I then blocked all of his social media accounts, his email, and his phone number. My relatives began sending me messages right away, including guilt trips about how this would ruin Lisa's marriage, pleas to stay quiet about what had happened, and cautions about family loyalty. I also blocked their numbers. I came to a realization that evening while I was sitting by myself in my partially vacant flat. This was more than merely David's treachery. This was the result of my family always picking Lisa over me. I had finally had enough of them choosing her happiness above mine. I inhaled deeply, made a glass of wine for myself, and started methodically clearing out their contact details from my phone. Every time I deleted something, I felt lighter. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. I put myself into my work after that night. My haven was the university. I worked in the lab for several hours as my research team worked on a molecular biology breakthrough project. Despite noticing my alteration, my co-workers were gracious enough to keep their distance. Richard, the husband of Lisa, arrived at my workplace 3 weeks following the engagement celebration. His normally spotless suit was a little rumpled, and he appeared exhausted. Simply put, I need to know everything, he said. I was honest with him. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and listened in quiet, his knuckles white. After I was done, he got up, fixed his tie and remarked, I appreciate your candor. You have at least one family member who respects the truth. Then he went away. My parents' efforts to get in touch with me grew more urgent. Voicemails about mending the family were left by Mom. Dad emailed about forgiving others and moving on. It was surprised that Lisa remained completely silent on the radio. My grandma later told me that Richard was divorcing them and had left their home. My pillar of support throughout this period was my grandmother Martha. She would sit with me, share stories about her personal challenges, and bring home-cooked meals. It was her opinion that the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I was resolved to turn my suffering into something useful. So I concentrated on drafting my next research article. One of the best journals in my profession approved the work. A professor at another university sent me a congrats email the day it was published. Michael, 45M, was his name, and he was an expert in research facility architecture. Michael's email was kind but professional. He remarked that he had read my earlier work and that our departments might work together. I was drawn to his writing style because it demonstrated more than simply professional etiquette. There was a sincere interest in the science. We started a communication regarding the relationship between research efficiency and laboratory design once I replied. Over time, our emails grew longer and more intimate. He talked about how his own family had helped him pursue his unusual career path of integrating scientific study with building. I really ran into him one day when I was buying coffee at the school cafe. I spilt my coffee all over his white shirt while he was at our university for a conference. As I assisted him in cleaning up, Michael grinned and commented, "Well, this is quite different from our email conversations," rather than being upset. He asked if he could get me a coffee substitute. I paused. I had vowed to never date again after David, especially in academic settings. However, Michael was different in some way. Perhaps it was the way his eyelids wrinkled when he grinned or the fact that he made no effort to impress me with his academic background. Observing my hesitancy, he laughed, "I promise I'm not a serial killer. Just a clumsy architect who'd like to replace your coffee and maybe hear more about your latest research in person." "Just coffee," I firmly stated. For the first time in months, I felt at ease as we sat and chatted. David was not like Michael at all. When I told him about my work, he listened. Really listened. With refreshing candor, he told tales of his own endeavors, triumphs and setbacks. He asked if he might see me again before heading out to his next conference session. To my astonishment, I said yes. I sat in my office that night and gazed out over the campus. I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time, when the quad was covered in long shadows from the sinking sun. Not only for a possible romance, but also for the chance to create a life that was really mine, free from Lisa's persistent influence and my family's expectations. My mother texted me, "Lisa is having a hard time." And my phone chimed. "Richard is acting irrationally. She requires her sister." I took a good look at the mail before deleting it without replying. After being torched, certain bridges ought to remain burned. Rather, I opened my email and started composing a letter to Michael regarding a joint study project I was considering. I grinned as I typed, recalling how his eyes had brightened when we talked about the possibilities of multidisciplinary study. Perhaps, just possibly, this was the start of something genuine. Something that was exclusively mine, unaffected by the poisonous relationships of my past. Update 1. 6 months have passed since my previous post. Regarding Michael, the architect I actually ran into at the campus cafe, many of you requested an update. That coffee date ended up into something I never would have imagined. Following our first meeting, we began discussing our joint study project over video calls. Over time, these business-related conversations turned into lengthy discussions on anything from childhood dreams to beloved books. Michael found my passion for academics fascinating. In contrast to my family, who always considered it as a weakness. There was no plan for our first actual date. We met to go over the specifics of the project while he was in town for another conference. We both were aware that we were hungry as the meeting was running late. We eventually found ourselves in a small Italian eatery close to campus, where we chatted and shared a plate of pasta until the waiters began stacking seats. I was particularly struck by how different he seemed from David. Michael did more than just skim my most recent research publication when I mentioned it. He read it carefully and returned with insightful questions. With refreshing candor, he discussed his own professional struggles, such as a recent project that had over its budget. When he inquired about my family, it was the true test. His genuine desire prompted me to open up, despite my initial reluctance. I filled him in on everything, including Lisa, my parents' partiality, and yes, the disastrous engagement party. He just listened, without the customary uncomfortable answers or attempts to protect familial relationships. He then showed me that he really understood by sharing his own experience with a competitive brother. Although our joint endeavor is progressing nicely, we have taken care to keep our personal and professional relationships apart. We mostly see each other on the weekends because his department is in a different state. In fact, the distance has been beneficial since it has allowed us to naturally build trust. He asked me to meet his family last weekend. Considering my past, I was afraid, but it was not what I had anticipated. I was welcomed right once by his mother, Linda, who shared stories about Michael's early architectural efforts and showed me his awkward childhood photos. It seems that he once attempted to use his father's power tools to rebuild their garage. "We've heard about your research work," Linda said, pulling me aside, which was the most bizarre moment. "Michael is constantly praising your brilliance." It was expressed with sincere pride and interest rather than comparison or jealousy. I neglected to add that I recently received an offer at work that would allow me to work closer to Michael's university. It's a prominent position that would greatly boost my career. His initial reaction when I informed him about it was, "That's incredible. Describe the research opportunities in detail." I was ecstatic with my accomplishment and said nothing about what it meant for us. I still haven't agreed to the job. I'm hesitant to make significant life adjustments for a romance after everything that happened with my family and David. However, knowing that Michael would be there for me no matter what, I feel for the first time that I can base this choice on what's best for my career. Last week, my grandmother Martha met him and approved of him. Simply, "He sees you," she said. "Not who he wants you to be, but who you are." It has been quiet, to be honest, and I haven't heard from Lisa or my parents in months. Healing sometimes entails letting go of those who don't value you, even if they are family. Update 2. My last update regarding Michael was 3 months ago. I want to share this with the group who helped me get through my worst moments since a lot has transpired. I agreed to work at the university close to Michael's. The change was welcomed by my research team, and we have established a method for remote communication. The main reason the transfer has gone smoothly is that I took my time and properly planned everything. Last weekend, the most significant change occurred. I was in Michael's kitchen preparing dinner with him. Instead of the butter I expected, he was holding a little box when he turned back to retrieve something from the refrigerator. He didn't get down on one knee or give a long speech. "You know how we've been talking about combining lab design with research efficiency," he added instead. Well, I've also been considering merging our lives. What are your thoughts? The ring was very different from the gaudy one David had given me. It was exquisite and simple. Michael's following statement, "I know your work is important to you," truly touched me. A matching desk lamp is included with the ring for use during late-night research sessions. Yes, I said, simultaneously crying and laughing. We are invited to an engagement celebration by Michael's parents. Regarding it, Linda has been really kind, often asking if I'm okay with the plans. Michael immediately offered that we forgo the party entirely when I hesitated. However, we're having a small gathering. Just close friends and family, because I don't want my past to control my future. Richard, the ex-husband of my former sister, sent me an unexpected email. He said he's doing well with his new companion and praised me. He appears content now that the divorce is official. Hearing from him was strangely therapeutic. Martha, my grandmother, is overjoyed. She gave me a hug and muttered, "This one's a keeper," after I showed her the ring. She is correct. The small things, like how he turned one of his spare rooms into a makeshift home office for me with a whiteboard for research notes, are what show how much Michael cares. Somehow, most likely through extended family, my parents learned about the engagement. Mom left a voicemail stating that they would like to participate in the celebration and make amends. I have not answered. It's preferable to keep some doors closed. Update 3. My engagement update was 2 months ago, and I wish I could report that everything has gone well since then. I must convey the unexpected turn the wedding preparations have taken. At the lakefront home of Michael's family, we were organizing a small ceremony. Linda has been fantastic. She has always respected our wishes while assisting with arrangements. Only family members, close friends and coworkers who truly support us were on the carefully picked guest list. Then I got an email yesterday that really chilled me. According to what my mother wrote, she and Dad decided to invite Lisa to the wedding. Their logic? She's your only sister, and family should be together on special days. I called Michael right away. "Whatever you want to do, I'm with you," he answered before I could even articulate my panic. We have the day, not them. I was able to think clearly thanks to his cool backing. When I told my grandmother Martha, she became enraged. "After everything they've done," she said, "they have no right." I knew I had to deal with this on my own, but she offered to run interference. Before sending it, I wrote and revised my response multiple times. "Mom and Dad, I made it very plain that I didn't want Lisa to attend my wedding. This cannot be discussed. You won't be accepted either if you're unable to respect this barrier. Elena." Their reaction was expected. About family togetherness, Mom called in tears. Dad wrote a long email about forgiving others and letting go. They even had some family members contact them on their behalf. Michael has had tremendous support from his parents during this time. Linda called to reassure me that only those invited would be allowed entry to the location due to security measures. Michael's brother James volunteered to deal with any unwelcome visitors directly. My research team's support was the most unexpected. They offered to surround me with a protective circle during the wedding after I brought up the matter in a lab meeting, looking agitated. My department director, Dr. Anderson, even offered to accompany me on my wedding. Last night, Michael and I went over our wedding arrangements. If it made me feel safer, he proposed that we alter the location, the date, or even go on an elopement. However, I no longer wish to allow my family's behavior to dictate my decisions. Therefore, we're sticking to our original intentions while taking extra safety measures. Individual QR codes will be included in the invitations, security will be in place at the location, and most importantly, our chosen family and real friends will be present to support us. Last weekend, my grandmother assisted me in choosing my wedding gown. She said something that made me cry as I stood in front of the mirror. "Dear, you're gleaming. Because you're at last free to be who you are, not because of the outfit. Though I'm more resilient than I was previously, I'm still anxious about what Lisa might try. There is more to our wedding than just Michael and I becoming husband and wife. It's about choosing genuine love over poisonous familial relationships, happiness over drama, and tranquility over upheaval." Update 4. It took place. Lisa appeared to my wedding wearing an outfit that looked to be meant to attract attention and was obviously pregnant, despite all of our safety procedures and security measures. She had somehow entered through a service entrance thanks to our parents. Linda hurried in with a pale face when I was in the wedding room. "I'm very sorry, Elena," she was brought by them. "Your mother made a fuss about not excluding an expectant woman when we attempted to stop them. She didn't have to complete." My parents had already put Lisa in the front row, but Michael sent his brother James to deal with the problem right away. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the same smug expression on her face that I had witnessed at my engagement party with David. I inhaled deeply and turned to face the mirror. My wrist was adorned with a handcrafted bracelet fashioned by my research team, the exquisite clothing grandmother Martha had assisted me in selecting, and Michael's first present to me, a lovely necklace including a little microscope pendant. "What do you want to do?" When I called Michael, he inquired. "They can still be taken out, or we can put it off. I support you no matter what you decide." I realized then that I had allowed them to dictate my happiness all my life. "Not today. We're getting married," I stated confidently. "They can stay, but I'm done letting them write my story." The ceremony got underway. Dr. Anderson, the director of my department, escorted me down the aisle with pride. Everything else vanished when I saw Michael waiting for me with love and compassion in his eyes. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Everyone laughed when Michael pledged to constantly support my scientific endeavors, adding, "Even if it means converting more rooms into lab space." From peer reviews to late-night science talks, I vowed to be his partner in everything. The reception followed. I believed I was ready for anything, but I was surprised by what transpired next. Lisa pretended to be the maid of honor and got to her feet, holding a glass of champagne. She began by describing how she had saved me from making terrible mistakes, and how she was always looking out for her big sister. Beneath the table, I felt Michael's fingers clasp mine. I noticed my research team stiffening up, poised to step in. Linda was getting up from her chair a little. However, for the first time in my life, I was able to fight my own fights without assistance. Calmly and professionally, as I would have addressed a lecture hall, I stood up, holding my own glass. "I think it's time for the bride to make a toast of her own," I replied. What came next? Well, that merits an update of its own. Let's simply say that speaking your truth with dignity might sometimes be the best form of retaliation rather than being silent. Update 5. Here is what transpired when I made my toast after my previous update regarding Lisa attending my wedding. As I stood there, staring at my sister's arrogant face, I experienced an odd feeling of peace. I'd been lecturing academically for years, so I knew how to control a room. I started by saying, "For those who don't know me well, I'm a scientist. We work with truth and facts. So allow me to share some family-related truths." There was a silence in the room. My sister, who was married at the time, was in bed with my then-fiancé 3 years ago. My parents were more concerned with preserving Lisa's reputation than with my wounded heart when I found them. At last, Lisa's smile wavered. Tom, her husband, whom she had brought as a sign of family unity, suddenly got to his feet. His voice was tight as he asked, "The baby, Tom? Is that why you've been avoiding the paternity test?" There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Lisa placed a protective hand over her growing tummy. I went on, speaking steadily. "There has always been a trend in my family. Lisa's happiness comes first. They pleaded with me to remain silent after she ruined my first engagement. They helped her get in when she arrived here without permission. But today, I said, is about true family, the type that makes you stronger rather than weaker. My research group, who take pride in my accomplishments. Michael's family, who embraced me with unmatched warmth. My grandmother, who never failed to recognize me for who I am." Tom was the first to go. Lisa called his name and ran after him. My mother was crying as my parents followed. The room's atmosphere abruptly lightened when the door closed behind them. Then my grandmother got up and held up her glass. In her own words, "To Elena and Michael. To truth, to real love, and to the family we choose." The remainder of the reception was excellent. Everyone relaxed without the burden of pretense. My study team secretly practiced a surprise dance, which they performed. I found out the following morning that Tom had requested a paternity test and filed for divorce. For once, I didn't feel obligated to assist in picking up the pieces when Lisa's meticulously constructed world fell apart. Update 6. A year has passed since my wedding and the amazing things that happened there. I wanted to give the community that helped me through everything one last update because so much has changed. Michael and I are expecting our first child, which is the major news initially. My first emotion upon seeing the positive test result was one of terror. It brought back memories of my own familial relationships. However, Michael's answer was ideal. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "This kid's going to have the best mom, a brilliant scientist who knows how to love unconditionally." The family of Michael and Linda has been amazing. Linda was thrilled about my latest research article as well as the baby when we told them. "This child is going to have such an amazing role model," she remarked, describing my work in the journal. I've heard tidbits of information regarding Lisa's situation from my grandmother Martha. Tom's suspicion that the baby wasn't his was validated by the paternity test. She is currently trying to start again while living with our parents. The reality of being a single mother has replaced the opulent lifestyle and fancy clothing. I occasionally have a slight sense of sadness, not precisely guilt, for the way things turned out. Michael's statement, "Consequences aren't cruel, they're just truth in action," comes to mind next. I'm doing well with my research. Michael and I worked together to build a new laboratory, and the university recently granted money for it. His inventive architecture and my research needs make for the ideal combination of our skills. Our work collaboration has only improved our friendship on a personal level. In my new lab, our baby will have a dedicated space, a secure enclosed play area, where they may be close to me as I work. Michael created it himself, adding all the safety features he could think of while still making it engaging for a child's growth. My circumstances haven't changed much, but I have. I no longer feel the need to compete for attention or prove myself. In our household, there is no hierarchy of love or success, only mutual understanding, support, and sincere joy in one another's accomplishments. Grandmother Martha, who is thrilled to be a great-grandmother, comes to visit frequently. She's already crocheting the baby little lab jackets while entertaining us with tales of my own early science projects. Even now, my parents still make an effort to connect, generally through family. I'm not ready, but they want to be involved in their grandchild's life. Some wounds require real change rather than just time to heal. As I reflect on my path, I see that responsibility or blood relationships aren't the key to creating a meaningful family. It's about finding people that love you for who you are, celebrate your happiness, and encourage your aspirations. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. Although life isn't flawless, it is genuinely and delightfully mine. My wife poisoned my family against me and took my daughter away, but years later, the truth finally came out. This is a story I never imagined I'd tell publicly, but after all that has happened, I need to get it off my chest. The previous several weeks have been nothing short of a roller coaster. Maybe someone out there can help me figure out if I'm really the terrible guy in all of this. I, 48 million, have experienced a tornado of emotions and experiences over the last decade, and it has all come to a climax in unexpected ways. It all began many years ago, when I married Laura, the mother of my daughter Emily. Laura and I were high school sweethearts, and at first, our bond appeared impenetrable. We were young, full of dreams, and eager to face the world together. But life has a way of tearing apart even the strongest relationships, and it wasn't long before the flaws in our relationship began to appear. Laura came from a wealthy family, accustomed to a life of luxury, whilst I grew up in a more modest home. Despite our disagreements, I loved her profoundly and did my best to provide for her in the way she was accustomed to. But no matter how hard I tried, it wasn't enough. The stress of attempting to meet Laura's expectations weighed heavily on me, and our marriage began to falter. Our relationship deteriorated, and we argued more frequently. I observed Laura appeared detached, as if her mind was elsewhere. I attempted to reach out to figure out what was wrong, but she continually dismissed me, stating that everything was okay. Only later, during the divorce proceedings, did I uncover the tragic reality. Laura had been unfaithful to me several times during our marriage. The revelation struck me like a ton of bricks. All those evenings I worked late to support our family, all the sacrifices I made to keep our marriage afloat, and she had been betraying me the entire time. Despite the grief and betrayal, my first priority was Emily, our daughter. She was just 11 years old at the time, and I wanted to do everything I could to be there for her. But that hope was dashed during the divorce settlement. Laura was determined to portray me as the villain in our story. She accused me of being emotionally distant and inattentive, and even hinted at possible abuse, all of which were false. But Laura was convincing, and she was able to turn my entire family against me, including my parents and siblings. They all believed her narrative and assumed that I had done something dreadful to push her to adultery. It seemed like I was stranded on an island, with no one willing to listen to me. The courtroom battle was ugly, and despite my best efforts, the judge sided with Laura. She was given full custody of Emily, while I was granted limited visitation rights. Laura destroyed even those few opportunities to visit my baby. She frequently forgot about scheduled visits, claiming Emily was unwell or had other commitments. I would volunteer to drive Emily to school or assist her with assignments, but Laura refused to let me play any significant role in her life. My family, who had always been close to Emily, supported Laura and helped her keep my daughter away from me. They were determined to remove me from Emily's life, and I was powerless to stop them. The years that followed were among the most agonizing of my life. It began subtly at first. Emily would be hesitant to visit me, preferring to stay with her mother. Even though it stung, I attempted to understand. After all, children frequently prefer one parent over the other, correct? However, it soon became evident that something more sinister was at work. Emily would come to our appointments with a laundry list of complaints, things I allegedly did or said that depicted me as the evil guy. I was perplexed since none of it was accurate. When I tried to talk to Laura about it, she dismissed my concerns or twisted the conversation to make it appear as if I was crazy or exaggerating. I tried for years to establish a relationship with Emily, but it got increasingly impossible. Phone calls remained unanswered, letters were returned unopened, and my attempts to visit her were met with animosity from Laura and my family. They all seemed intent on erasing me from Emily's life. The worst thing happened when Emily was around 13. She said bluntly that she didn't want to see me anymore. She spoke it with coldness, as if I meant nothing to her. I was devastated. I knew Laura had been telling Emily lies, but I didn't have the heart to drag her through a messy court battle. After all, she wanted to stay with her mother, and separating her from her mother would only exacerbate the situation. I didn't want to be the source of further trouble in her life, so I reluctantly decided to pull back. It was one of the most difficult decisions I'd ever made. I hoped that one day she'd grasp the truth and return to me, but that didn't happen for a long time. Years later, I gradually but steadily moved past that horrific moment in my life. I met Megan, and there was an instant connection between us. Because of my previous experiences, we took our time getting to know each other before getting married. Megan had 2 children of her own, so the majority of my time was spent with them, and we established a life together. While I adored my new family, there was always a part of me that wondered about Emily. How was she doing? What had she become? I contacted Laura several times over the years to inquire about Emily, but she never replied. I tried to convince myself that Emily was better off without me, but I couldn't get rid of the sense that I had abandoned her. Then, unexpectedly, Emily contacted me. She was 20 years old now, and her message was brief and straightforward. She wanted to meet and chat. She stated she needed to know more about our family, including why I wasn't there for her. My heart skipped a beat as I read her message. The prospect of seeing her after all this time made me nervous, but I was not going to pass up the opportunity to see my kid. I was scared but excited. Perhaps this was the moment I had been waiting for all these years. We planned to meet in a quiet cafe. I was nervous as I waited for her to arrive. When she eventually walked in, I barely recognized her. She had matured into a beautiful young woman, but the wrath and sadness in her eyes were undeniable. She had clearly been carrying a lot of anguish for quite some time. We sat across from each other, and the tension was evident. Emily didn't spend time getting to the subject. She needed answers. Answers I knew would be difficult to hear. I took a big breath and started telling her the truth. I did not hold back. I told her everything. How her mother and family had deliberately poisoned her against me, how they had twisted every scenario to make me look terrible, and how I had worked so hard to be a part of her life despite everything. I told her about Laura's infidelity and the lies she told during the divorce. I spent the next 3 hours laying out the facts of what had happened. I had brought up previous court records, text messages, and emails that corroborated my story. I wanted Emily to know that I understood what she had been taught about me over the years, and that I wasn't the monster she had been led to believe. Emily sat startled as I explained what had transpired. She grew up believing that I was the one who had abandoned her, that I didn't care enough to be a part of her life. She found it overwhelming to learn the truth. I could see she was absorbing everything, so I didn't press her to react. I knew that was a lot for her to take in. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. She questioned me why I never fought back, why I didn't do more to stay in her life. That question crushed me. I had to explain that I did not want to place her in the center of a court dispute and that I believed standing back was the best way to protect her. I wanted her to have a good upbringing, even if it meant she despised me for a while. But the truth was that I regretted not battling harder. I regretted allowing Laura and her family to control the story. Emily appeared to be gaining a better understanding of what had happened. She was outraged, partly at me, but largely at her mother. She couldn't believe Laura had gone to such efforts to make herself look like the better parent. Emily realized she had to take action. She stated that she wanted to confront her mother and lay everything out for everyone. I was astonished, but also proud of her for advocating for herself. Emily wasn't the young kid I knew a decade ago. She was a strong lady capable of self-defense. At the same time, I was concerned about the impact this would have on her. I breathed a sigh of relief when she said she wasn't sure how to go with our connection because she'd grown accustomed to having an absent father, but she'd love to meet and talk more. Laura bombarded me with angry phone calls and text messages 2 days later. Emily apparently challenged her with the information I shared. Laura was outraged, accusing me of turning Emily against her and ruining their friendship. I didn't expect Emily's next action. She called me yesterday to say she's going to take Laura to court for parental alienation. She intends to sue for the emotional harm caused by years of lies and manipulation. Laura still calls me constantly now. She is between demanding that I talk Emily out of the lawsuit and threatening. My family is also getting in touch, suddenly wanting to straighten things out and reconnect. I'm at a loss. One could say that Emily's at last knowing the truth relieves some guilt. Conversely, I never meant for things to get this far. Along with Emily, I also have Megan and her children to look for at this point in my life. I'm not sure whether I could manage the same mental strain once more. While Laura and my family should pay for their acts, I don't want to bring further suffering or trouble. I have been essentially torn. Emily deserves praise for searching the truth and for trying to speak out against the mistreatment she has suffered. But I also worry for her. The legal system is harsh, particularly in cases involving families, and I wanted her to suffer less than she already had. From a distance, I attempted to assist her so she could make her own decisions and let her know I was always available for her should she need me. The emotional strain Laura and my family are causing is not even something I can articulate. All of this makes me wonder if, despite this complex scenario, I did the right thing by telling my daughter the truth about her mother and our past. Your advice and views would be much valued. Update 1. Hey everyone, things have turned bad, which was rather natural. Any confrontation with Laura would not be simple since she shows no respect for anyone around her. I only knew that would also include our daughter. Emily came to our house after her argument with her mother. Her eyes were red from crying. She unleashed this time without restraint. She laid everything out, every agonizing aspect of her life for the past 8 years. Laura might have gained custody, but it was abundantly evident that she had no concept what it meant to be a mother, let alone look after a child. Emily related how Laura wasn't even home half of the time. She would be away, occasionally for days on end, leaving Emily to care for herself. Laura was intoxicated and erratic half of the time, when she was home. Emily talked of evenings when Laura would come home in a fury, throwing things, screaming, and occasionally even blaming Emily for her own mistakes and discontent. As she related these events, the loneliness, the anxiety she must have experienced, my heart broke. Still to come, though, was the worst. Emily related to us 2 occurrences that still tormented her. She was 13 years old at first. Laura had departed without food or money, alone for the weekend. Emily burned her hand quite severely while trying to prepare something for herself. She was in great agony, but when she tried phoning Laura, she did not answer. Just a child, Emily had to go to the closest hospital with her hand covered in a towel. Alone, terrified, in pain, she waited hours in the ER before a nurse at last spotted her and attended to her. Emily showed me the scar on her palm, a continual reminder of her mother's negligence. Still worse was the second episode. Laura had been on a drinking frenzy for weeks. She was 15. Emily made every effort to avoid her mother, until one evening Laura became aggressive. In a flash of wrath, she flung a glass at Emily that broke against her leg severely. Emily was in shock and bleeding. Instead of tending to her, Laura yelled at her to tidy the mess. Terrified, Emily covered her leg in an old shirt and headed once more toward the hospital. She wound up needing sutures there. I had a range of emotions as Emily related these tales, sorrow for all the suffering Emily had gone through, and fury at Laura for sending our daughter through this dream. It was not something I had felt in years. She was young and not deserving of any of this. She did not deserve to be left terrified, injured and alone. The one person meant to be defending her ought not to treat her like a burden. This was unmistakable physical and psychological assault. It seemed ironic that Laura's daily routines included the very things she had accused me of dragging Emily away from. Laura should have simply let me look after Emily to prevent all of this. Emily may have had a normal, contented life if she hadn't been so enthralled with her own selfishness and spite. The entire evening Megan and I listened to Emily. We checked to see she felt at ease and understood she was safe now. Megan specifically consoled Emily by holding her hand and telling her none of this was her fault. Having someone console Emily, tell her she was loved and that she mattered, seemed so important to her. Then Emily apologized to me in a moment that was both sad and contradictory. She had nothing to repent of, hence she didn't need to? But she did. She admitted she pushed me away, she was sorry for believing all the lies her mother had taught her, and she should have seen the reality sooner. Her voice faltered as she informed me she had missed me so much over these years and had frequently wondered what life would have been like if she had lived with me instead. I told her how much I had missed her too, how I had never stopped thinking about her, how I had never stopped loving her, and that she did not need to apologize for anything as Laura's games merely served as a victim stage. That was a mixed feeling. Hearing her apologies hurt, But it also meant that we were at last re-establishing our relationship following all these years apart. I also came to see that I was done running from family strife and playing it safe. Though it meant facing legal conflict with my ex-wife, my daughter's well-being was at risk and I was determined to receive the apology and reparations she deserved. After a restless night of consoling and chatting, Emily and I hatched a strategy early the next morning. We were going to face my family about everything. Every lie, every act of neglect, everything Emily had gone through. I was done with them acting as though they were the ideal family while Laura had helped Emily to ruin her early years. The medical records, text messages, and even some old Laura voicemails Emily had preserved provided the evidence we needed. It was time to tell them just exactly what their complicity had cost. It was time to reveal the truth. Emily seemed anxious, but I could also detect a resolution in her eyes not previously seen. I was going to be right there beside her. She was ready to meet them and defend herself. At last, we would be getting the justice we both deserved, and I knew that whatever happened would be shared by us. Whatever transpires, you folks will be the first to know. It means a lot to have you understand my circumstances and provide constructive remarks. This is absolutely not the end, hence I will come returning with updates. Update 2. Hi everybody, hope everyone is doing fantastic? Think back to the family confrontation Emily and I had scheduled. Well, it happened and it was most certainly memorable. I agreed to pay a surprise visit together with my daughter. I saw the amazement on their faces as soon as we entered the door. They seemed unable to really handle seeing us together, united after all these years. They had never imagined that the years of isolation, manipulation, and deceit could be quickly reversed. Here we were nevertheless, poised side by side ready to face them. The first shock passed swiftly, and they hurried to present their customary worried front. The first person to talk was my mother, whose voice was tinged with phony anxiety as she asked Emily whether I had offended her or harmed her. The implication stung, not because I cared what others thought of Laura, but rather because it demonstrated how firmly they had embraced her story. Though it was a horrible idea, one they appeared to hold without doubt was that I would hurt my own daughter. Perhaps because it would help them to defend their own behavior, they were fast to accept the worst of me. But Emily was no more the terrified, bewildered child Laura knew, and I was not Laura. Emily stepped forward before I could answer. Her voice was firm, full of a quiet strength that made me proud. She urged them to abandon the act, to stop acting as though they cared when throughout the years they had done nothing to support her. Her statements were neither wavering or hesitant. She called them out for their indifference, for standing by while Laura ignored and mistreated her, and for helping to bring about the ruin of her early years. I observed as my siblings and parents struggled to hide their uneasiness. Their looks changed from pretended concern to something more like irritation. They disliked being challenged, particularly not by Emily, who they still considered as a child, someone who ought to be appreciative of whatever sloppiness of attention they had given her. But Emily was no child anymore, and she showed no interest in their empty apologies or explanations. Some of you have inquired how Laura simply set my own family against me. Our relationship has always been complex, underlying animosity and years of unresolved problems entangling it. My siblings and I had never been close. There was always a sense of one-upmanship, of competitiveness, that corroded any possibility of a real bond. Rather than encouraging harmony, my parents had sided with whichever child would have the greatest benefit for them at the time. Laura came to them intending to divorce me, and they saw it as a chance to vent their residual animosity at me. They had not given Emily or me any thought about how it would affect us. Their interests were more in seeing me pushed down a peg than in clearing past records. Emily gave out everything that had happened. How Laura had deserted her, how she had experienced trauma and injuries while they turned a blind eye, and I could see the anxiety rising on their faces. Particularly not by someone they had undervalued for so long, they were not used to being questioned in this manner. It was not only the words that stung, it was Emily's holding of them responsible, refusing to let their typical platitudes absolve them. Of course, we withheld some of what we had. Showing all of our cards at once was not necessary. We had text messages, hospital records, and other data readily able to undermine their well-crafted story. For now, though, we kept most of it under wraps, simply showing enough to make it abundantly evident we were serious. This was a warning, a proclamation that we were done following their guidelines and that things were going to get far more serious, not only some emotional outburst. We fled the house not waiting for any reply. Nothing they could say would make any difference, nothing that would undo the years of suffering and neglect they had let to occur. Emily said one last farewell as we turned away. She advised them to forward it to Laura, therefore alerting her that we were arriving with a somewhat heavy case and she should be ready for it. Although the silence that followed us as we departed was oppressive, it was a silence loaded with unspoken words, the weight of what was to come. Emily and I had marked our line on the sand. There was no turning back. The family has always prospered on separation, on keeping us apart and at conflict with one another. But now, Emily and me standing together, they were the ones who would have to deal with the fallout. I want you to know that I am always reading over each and every comment. All of you have given me some of the best advice. Your help is quite valuable. Update 3. Hello, I want to thank everyone who has supported and advised me based on this narrative. Though I believe we are at last seeing a way forward, the previous few days have been some of the most difficult of my life. So strap up for a long one. I got in touch with one of our lawyers right away following the event at my family's house. Not just to me but also to Emily. I was not ready to let Laura get away with all she had done. Emily startled me nevertheless when I mentioned considering legal action. She wanted no more legalities moving ahead. Far from contrary, it was not that she lacked empathy or that she was forgiving her mother. Emily had different responsibilities now and had lately gone through a lot. She had great ideas for her future and her academic life was vibrant. She could not afford to pause to sue her mother and handle a court dispute. As her dad, I was really proud of her. She was still a brilliant, tenacious young woman with enormous professional possibilities ahead of her after all she had gone through. I did, however, also find myself torn. Part of me wanted Laura to suffer for her deeds, to pay for the suffering she had brought about. One thing I did wrong was ruin my life. Nevertheless, I found unforgivable damage done to Emily, that of robbing her of a normal, happy childhood. I did, however, honor Emily's desires. Unlike her mother's, her view counted here, and it was something I would constantly keep in mind while deciding what to do. Another thing occurred when we were negotiating all of this. 2 days later, Laura's neighbor walked up to our door bearing an envelope. The neighbor said Laura had asked her to bring the mail to us as she was temporarily leaving town. Though I had no idea what to expect, I accepted the envelope and thanked the neighbor. Within the envelope Laura had a note, long and full of apologies and explanations. It sought to defend her behavior. She talked about losing her job, how she grew quite alone when I left, and how events descended from there. She finally landed another job, but it paid little, and she descended into more misery. Drinking became her coping mechanism. She said she never intended to hurt Emily, that she was simply so lost and overwhelmed by her own suffering. Laura continued to go into great detail about more of her challenges, seeking to depict a lady driven to the brink by events beyond her reach. But reading made me focus only on how hollow everything sounded. Laura was obviously trying to justify her actions and project an impression of victimization from her own experiences. But no degree of difficulty could excuse her treatment of Emily. She begged us not to go to legal war at the end of the letter. As a show of kindness, she pledged to avoid Emily. She also offered to pay whatever we felt was appropriate as reparations for the damage she had done. Emily's eyes showed grief as soon as I turned over the letter to her. She had not sought this apology, and it most definitely was not the resolution she was due. What kind of mother leaves her child like this and subsequently believes that money could possibly offset all the years of suffering and neglect? For Emily, it was a terrible insight. I knew she needed time to get through it. Emily needed space as she would reach out to Megan or me when she was ready. For Emily, someone she could confide in without judgment, my wife Megan had become fast a comfort. Soon Emily became like family to all of us, developing a close relationship with Megan's kids. Although I wanted to assist, I knew Emily would gain more from Megan's support and viewpoint to help her to organize everything. Eventually Emily came to me with her choice. She refused to go after a legal lawsuit. She wanted not to drag things out anymore or become mired in a nasty court struggle. Freed from the shadows of the past, she wanted to start anew and concentrate on her and her future. Emily was ready to go on, and I knew this was the right decision even if I wanted justice for her. She had lived under the weight of her mother's errors for sufficient time. She was ready to live her life on her terms. Emily's choice sent us into a fresh chapter. She began concentrating more on her academics, directing her efforts toward her objectives and dreams. As Megan negotiated this new stage of her life, Megan and I kept helping her in all possible respects, providing direction and encouragement. Regarding myself, this seems like a dream. Things cannot have concluded on a better note. I have 3 children and an incredible wife at my side. Though the trip had been protracted and agonizing, at last we had returned to one another. More than all, that was the real success in all of this. Once more, I appreciate all of your support. Though it's been an incredible journey, I believe we are at last headed toward recovery. Parents demand I cancel my wedding for sister's engagement, but the truth about her cheating changed everything. Engaged to my fiancé Jake, 30 million, I, a 28-year-old lady, have been for roughly 8 months. Up until last week, when my parents shocked us, our October wedding was scheduled and all was going according to plan. For background, Mia, 25F, our younger sister, has always been the golden child in our family. She has been seeing Tom, 26 million, her lover, for around 2 years. In practically every sphere of our existence, my parents have always showered Mia with royal care. Though I hate to sound negative, I have always felt as though hers dominates my successes. Mia was a cheerleader while I was a straight-A student playing on the volleyball team back in high school. Her achievements always seemed to eclipse all mine. Not to get me wrong, cheerleading merits just as much respect as any other sport, but would it have killed my parents to exhibit the same fervor for my events? I grew used to my absent parents and learnt to expect almost little from them. I thus cut myself off from Mia, though deep down I knew it wasn't her responsibility. My immature self blamed Mom for everything. My viewpoint altered only in college, when I met Jake, the love of my life. He let me see that I deserved just as much attention as everyone else and was deserving of affection. Jake showed me that every one of us is unique in our own right and that, should someone not value my accomplishments, well, that is their loss. I also realized that it was unfair to hold Mia totally responsible when our parents were clearly in charge. I thus resolved to try to rebuild whatever sisterly relationship we still had. I started letting her know she could talk to me about anything and checking up on her more often. She first hesitated naturally, but she soon grew more at ease sharing with me. We discussed practically anything, regardless of its silliness or gravity. Though our tastes and paths of life were different, I was glad our connection was getting better gradually. We seemed to be at last the sisters we ought to have been all along. Mia knew first when Jake proposed to her. Telling me she couldn't wait to help arrange my wedding, she was as eager as I was. Everything seemed ideal at that point. I was therefore really taken aback when my mother called last Wednesday. The call began innocuously enough. Mom inquired about wedding preparations, which was odd given her previous lack of enthusiasm. I ought to have seen something was wrong. She finally got right to the point after a few minutes of small talk. Mia and Tom were getting engaged. I started to be delighted for my sister as soon as those words emerged from her mouth. Better than this, what could be? Then I noticed Mom had stated, planning to get engaged, which threw me off. Mom said Mia had told her Tom had been hinting at proposing when I asked her what she meant by that. He had done all the other usual things, asked about her ring size, advised her to get a new outfit, and told her. Although these were rather clear indicators, Mia always had a tendency of romanticizing everything and exaggerating events to make them appear more than they really were. I wanted Mia not to have her expectations skyrocketing only to be let down. When I asked Mom whether she was absolutely convinced Tom was proposing, she answered boldly. That would have marked the end of the call, but another surprise was approaching, one I would not be pleased about. My mother asked me to call off our wedding since Tom and Mia were apparently engaged. I let out a gasp. Though I must have misinterpreted, I asked her to clarify. No, she was dead serious. For 10 months I had been planning. She wanted me to call off the wedding Jake had proposed. We had waited this long since we wanted the wedding of our dreams and refused to compromise on anything. Deposits for the caterers and other suppliers had already been laid down. Not to mention the inconvenience of rearranging things, moving everything back a year would entail losing a large sum of money. What had descended upon Mom and Dad was unknown to me. When we were short on money, they had volunteered to cover the venue. I assumed this was because they were at last interested in my life. Looking back, it seemed like they did it to challenge Jake's parents. But I was too delighted at the time to pay attention to their hidden agendas. Wait, though, this was not even the worst of things. You haven't heard the rationale behind my planned delay of my wedding for Mia's expected engagement. Mom clarified that Mia wanted to be the center of attention for a full year, complete with announcements on social media and engagement pictures. I could not understand at all. Who loses money over something as flimsy as social media and calls their sister off from her wedding? Promising not to post anything about my wedding online, I tried to argue with Mom, but she claimed they would withdraw all the money they had promised for the wedding should I refuse to postpone it. Their lovely daughter was an attention seeker, hence at this time they were virtually blackmailing me. This was ludicrous and unfair, I told my mother. We debated for some time, her arguing that I was being thoughtless of Mia's sentiments and selfish. What about my feelings? I asked repeatedly. Still, I received no meaningful response. She responded simply that they wouldn't pay for the venue should I proceed with the wedding. I got furious. All my life, I gave things up for Mia's sake. Now, when I was at last ready to experience the day of my dreams, that too was being robbed from me. Out of pure annoyance and rage, I did something I never would have done. I contacted Mia's fiancé, Tom, to let him know something about Mia he didn't know. The four of us, Jake and I, Mia and Tom, went on a double date some years ago when everything was good. One of those few times when we all had time to hang around together. I recall being quite content. We laughed, told stories, and for once everything seemed ideal. Mia and I excused ourselves to the bathroom to freshen at one point throughout the evening. Mia handed me her phone to hold as we corrected our makeup so she could wash her hands. A text message suddenly sprang up on the screen. It came from someone called Mike wondering whether they might get back together. My heart still missed a beat. Though I heard Mia had dated someone some years ago, I felt he was no more relevant. Not sure I could resist asking, "Who's Mike, and why is he asking to meet again?" Mia started to spin right away. She dismissed it, believing it was nothing, just some old acquaintance extending outreach. Still, I could see her eyes ablaze with dread. I questioned once more whether something was developing between her and Mike. She said she had some texting back and forth, but she insisted it was not major. She shrugged her eyes and replied lightly, "Tom didn't need to know, it's nothing," when I inquired whether Tom knew about this. Tom seemed to be a nice man totally loving Mia. Though I couldn't get rid of the uncomfortable sensation, I let it pass since Mia later on told me she was no longer corresponding with her ex. Right then, as Mia was trying to rob me of my bliss, my thoughts went crazy. I lay it all out when I phoned Tom, roughly following the text I had seen that day. And should that not be sufficient, I advised him to monitor his girlfriend. Looking back, I realized this was sort of improper, not the sort of truth I should have been imparting to Tom, of course, but the way I did it. But already it was too late. I spoke with Tom 2 days ago, and then Mom called. Just say I was glad I wasn't in front of her. She was yelling like a crazed person, as though a tragedy had hit. Her comments really impacted me as I had made a major error. Tom apparently told Mia they needed to talk when phoning her. Mia got all ready even though she was about to be engaged, but when she at last arrived at the location, Tom was quite irate. He inquired whether that was accurate and reiterated what I had said. Mia first denied it, but she grew angry when Tom wanted to see her phone, telling him he should believe her. Tom split from Mia at last. Mom and Dad never seemed likely to pardon me for this. Mom yelled at me, and I could hear Mia berating me in the backdrop. I kept apologizing, saying I only did this because they insisted I call off my wedding. I told them I had worked very hard on it. Dad's ruling then was that he was taking back the money they had set aside for the venue. I felt as like I had lost everything, my parents, Mia, and any chance for a marriage at that same instant. Given what had happened, I knew Jake would not be pleased with me either. When I attempted phoning Mia to have a conversation, she didn't respond to my calls or texts. At the time, Jake was on a business trip, hence he was not aware that our wedding was under risk, partially because to me. Though it wasn't entirely my fault, the stress was intolerable and I felt bad for damaging Mia's relationship. I at last told Jake everything when he returned from his trip. He was quite helpful and encouraged me that we would work things out together. It relieves me. He helped me see that I ought to have done it even earlier, as being honest was the correct thing to do. Regarding the wedding, Jake and I decided to proceed even if it meant lowering expenses. We began generating ideas for financial savings. We contacted relatives and friends, outlining the circumstances and requesting assistance. Unbelievably, one of Jake's pals came to save us. He came upon us at a classy but reasonably priced location via one of his contacts. Given the current situation, we simply have to delay the wedding somewhat more, which is quite okay with me. I was attempting to stay in touch with my parents throughout this. Looking back, I'm not sure why I did this. At the time, I was afraid of being let down. I was living with guilt. Still, they were obstinate, refusing to show up for my wedding if it proceeded as scheduled. The wedding was still under preparation, and despite all the challenges, everything began to fall together. Sadly, many of my family RSVP'd that they would not be going or responded little at all. I could guess the news had gone without having to be Sherlock. One of my aunts told me Mom and Mia had depicted me as a soap opera villain who lied to undermine her sister's happiness and could not accept it. They even changed the story, saying Mia was already engaged and preparing to wed, but I later got engaged to take the front stage. Ignoring me was one thing, lying about my character took effort. By now I was exhausted. After all that had happened, I couldn't look and feel my best for a wedding. Simultaneously, I struggled to let my parents define me as they had throughout their lifetime. They accused me of being envious and cruel, attributing Mia's life destruction to me. Mia, on the other hand, was in ruins. She hadn't spoken to me since the incident, hence even though I knew what I did was appropriate, I felt awful. So, I'm asking you. Am I the a-hole for not postponing my wedding and informing Mia's fiancé of her cheating? Update. I published a few days ago, and the reaction has been really strong. Unbelievably, my parents began talking to me, but not for the reasons you might guess. They insisted that I apologize to Mia and somehow sort things out with Tom. Should I fail, they even threatened to have me disowned. Through all of this, Jake has been rather encouraging, telling me we did the right thing and we should concentrate on our forthcoming wedding. But at last Mia got back to me. Furious and devastated, she accused me of destroying her life and undermining her happiness out of spite. The talk was challenging. She wasn't open to hearing me try to explain my perspective. She persisted in arguing, regardless of what she had done, I had no right to meddle in her relationship. I lost my cool and asked her who gave her the right to believe she could influence my wedding plans that had been in place long before she was almost engaged. She hung up before I could even bring up the lies Mom and she had been telling about me. Meg, a childhood acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years, called me out of the blue when word of the family strife spread like wildfire. After moving out for college, I had disconnected from Meg, and our only means of contact was social media. But Mia had kept in touch with her for a bit longer. Their friendship reached into their early 20s. Meg also disclosed another startling story concerning Mia's adultery, one that happened around a year ago. Meg's 25th birthday celebration was attended by Mia without her then-boyfriend Tom, who presumably was on a trip. Meg saw Mia growing more flirty with various male visitors, including her boyfriend, as the evening progressed and practically everyone was intoxicated. Meg first dismissed it as Mia's usual manner. She had always been a natural flirt. Meg knew, though, she hadn't seen Mia or her partner for some time as the celebration drew to an end and guests started to leave. Red-handed together in another room, they were caught. Given Mia and Tom had been dating 2 to 3 years at the time, this was very embarrassing. The episode split Meg and Mia and destroyed their friendship. When Meg learned about everything, she assumed I should know that Mia did nothing by mistake. She had become accustomed to this conduct and had somehow always gotten away with it. This fresh material really surprised me. Mia's dishonesty, I came to see, was not a one-time error but rather a habit. I asked Meg only one favor. Could she kindly forward this news to Tom herself? I was acting for a cause. When my fiancé Jake visited Tom, he was not doing well. Though he didn't say it, I'm sure he was also blaming me for what I had told him. He was second-guessing everything. Better still if someone else than me delivered this terrible news. I also wanted to avoid feeding the story that I was jealous of Mia, hence I didn't want to do this myself. Tom wanted to meet personally to go over things as soon as he received word from Meg. I accepted, expecting for some sort of conclusion or at least clear the air. Tom clearly was in shock from all that had transpired when we met at a neighborhood coffee shop. Meg's disclosure came to him like yet another wave, yet it was welcome to at last know the truth. Tom related how his split from Mia turned out. Mia was right to believe Tom intended to pop the question to her. Following our talk, he challenged Mia about the cheating, and she finally came clean. Though crushed, he valued my candor. He claimed it was preferable to know the truth now than to learn later, maybe following marriage. Tom said he had thought something was awry in their relationship for some time but couldn't pin it down until I phoned. We spoke for a lengthy period during which Tom revealed he intended to set aside time for personal healing and life review. Though it hurt, he appreciated me for having the guts to tell him the truth. Knowing I had done the right thing by being truthful with Tom, this chat brought me closure. Still, things with my family have not gotten better. My parents still support Mia. They think I was out of line and must make apologies. Focusing just on Mia's pain and neglecting the fact she cheated, they cannot seem to understand why I did what I did. Friends and relatives who learned about the circumstances have also been quite helpful. Many expressed shock at the way my parents behaved and praised me for defending what was right. Though I have a mixed bag of feelings, I am appreciative of the help from people who see my viewpoint. I'm trying to keep concentrated on the good and keep wedding planning underway. Despite the threats from his parents, Jake and I have decided to carry out our plans. We have changed the budget and are working to create the wedding unique without their financial support. Though I know the drama is not over, I am resolved to stick to my position. I refuse to allow Mia's behavior or the inclination of my parents define my existence anymore. I have to give my future with Jake top priority and my happiness. Hey, everyone. Every moment that passes makes my life seem to get more convoluted. About 4 days following my initial update, events changed dramatically and unexpectedly. Just as I felt the situation could not get worse, it did. Trying to concentrate, I was at work when Jake called urgently. Panicked, he told me to head straight home. Fuming something horrible, I rushed back. When I got here, Jake seemed obviously upset. He handed me a note that had dropped under our door. It came from a lawyer standing in for my parents. Over the consequences from Mia's failed engagement, they were threatening to sue me for emotional suffering and slanderous remarks. I was astounded. My own parents were suing me. The letter explained how my actions had destroyed Mia's reputation and brought her great emotional suffering. It called for a public apology, a retraction of my remarks on Mia's adultery, and a sizable payback in money. To be as nasty as possible, my parents had stretched every limit. My phone buzzed as I went over the letter. Mia was the one calling constantly. At last, looking for some answers, I took up Mia's voice carrying a mix of desperation and wrath. Saying I had destroyed her life and she had nothing left, she screamed at me. She said she had lost her work since Tom had informed colleagues and mutual acquaintances of hers about her adultery. The word had gone like wildfire, and she was today the target of rumors and criticism. She was deemed problematic, which resulted in her termination. Having my parents send me that legal fear, I felt Mia got what she deserved. She was inconsolable even though I tried to reason with her, stressing that she had to own her actions. Claiming that I had always wanted to see her fail, she charged me with being envious and bitter. The chat made me feel forlorn and exhausted. The rest of the evening, Jake and I went over our choices. Although we couldn't let my parents pressure us into compliance, we couldn't afford to get caught in a legal fight with them. This legal fight would simply mark the nail in the coffin, as I believe they knew we were already juggling our wedding budget. I contacted a lawyer for help the next day. The circumstances stunned him, but he reassured me our case was strong. He advised us to compile proof of Mia's adultery and how it affected her relationship to Tom. Should my parents carry out their threats, he also cautioned us to get ready for a counterclaim. All of this was going on when I got another unplanned call, this one from Tom's mother. Having heard about the circumstances, she wanted to thank me for guiding Tom toward the truth. Tom was devastated, she remarked, but he was glad to learn before committing himself for lifetime. She also said Tom intended to start again in another city. Her call provided a minor solace among all the turmoil. It let me realize that by being honest, I had done the right thing even with the instantaneous fallout. Though they may act as outrageously as they wanted, my parents and Mia would remain in the wrong. That weekend, things took yet another drastic turn. Unexpectedly showing up at our residence were my folks furious. They insisted on talking with me. Though Jake tried to calm them, it soon turned into a shouting contest. While my mother wailed and begged me to mend things with Mia, my father claimed I had destroyed the family. Should I fail to meet their expectations, they reiterated their threats to cut me off financially and go on with the lawsuit. I stayed put, not cowering into compliance. I told them I would not be sorry for speaking the truth. Mia's actions have consequences. My parents stormed out at the end of the confrontation, resolved to start the case. The next several days were a haze of emotional upheaval and legal discussions. Though Jake and I tried to concentrate on our wedding preparations, the tension was too great. Extended family members who had heard about the circumstances started messaging us. Some offered support while others attacked my behavior. Although Jake didn't deserve all this drama, I really detested dragging him through it, but I was also appreciative of his unflinching support. In among all this, Meg, the childhood friend who had informed me of Mia's past infidelity, sent me an unexpected note. Should my parents want to take legal action, her offer to submit a statement regarding what had happened at her party may be very important proof. Meg's encouragement and the data we were compiling helped me to begin to see hope. Although it was obvious that this struggle was far from finished, I resolved myself to stick to what was right. As I am working on it, I also want to thank you all for being my support network during this period. Though it hasn't been simple, you have clearly shown me direction. I will see you folks a little. Hello, everyone. After several more days, the issue has gotten quite hot. Mia and my dad insisted on getting together personally to go over everything. Jake and I consented, believing this encounter could at last provide some clarity and closure. We agreed to get together in our place so we might manage the surroundings and steer clear of a public display. There was clear tension in the air as my parents and Mia showed up. When they sat down, I could see the expectation in their eyes. Though I had no intention of backing down, they most likely assumed I would be apologizing and begging for forgiveness. I began with tackling the elephant in the room. My parents and Mia looked perplexedly, obviously not expecting this. I informed them, I understand why everyone is here today, but before we go any further, I want to make one thing clear. I'm here to lay out the facts. I inhaled deeply and started making my point. I began with the couple months ago. I questioned Mia if it wasn't true that she handed me her phone during our double-date dinner and that I found she was chatting to Mike, her ex-boyfriend, when she was in a very committed relationship with Tom. She said she made a one-time error, but we both knew it wasn't accurate. Mia moved uneasily in her seat, her face pallid. I carried on, opening a folder loaded with proof. She confirmed that Mia had been found cheating with her boyfriend when I told her I had talked with Meg, who threw the party a year ago. This was a behavior trend, not a one-time error. I turned over a written statement Meg sent. Mia's parents and I looked at it, their expressions changing from uncertainty to shock. Still, that was only one thing. I also brought out more proof. Text exchanges between Mia and Meg in which Mia admitted to cheating and pleaded with Meg not to tell Tom. These timestamped signals were unambiguous and devoid of uncertainty. On the table I arranged the printed messages. Though this time it appeared more toward Mia than it did me, my mother gasped and my father's face became red with rage. At last, I turned to Tom and said in a letter, he spoke about how he approached Mia following our talk and how she finally admitted. He also detailed the emotional toll her adultery took on him and how it affected his choice not to pop the question. My parents found no words. Unable to dispute the overwhelming proof, they fixated on the paperwork before them. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she said nothing, clearly understanding the seriousness of the matter. I then addressed the lawsuit. Although my parents had threatened to sue me for emotional suffering and slander, based on the facts it was abundantly evident that what I had said was accurate. They lacked legal justification for their posture. Actually, if they went after this, I had a strong case for a counterclaim. The space was quiet. Clearly surprised and adjusting to the reality of the circumstances were my parents and Mia. Knowing that I had at last advocated for myself, I felt relief. For the last time, I told Mia I did this because it was the proper thing to do, not out of spite or jealousy. Mia had consequences for her actions. It was time for her to own them. Regarding my wedding, my message was straightforward. Either with or without their approval, everything was going forward as scheduled. We wouldn't allow someone to destroy our happiness. Jake and I would be getting married. Rising to indicate that the session was over, I hoped this would be a turning point for all of us. That brought me closure and I left the room. Though I am aware that difficulties lie ahead, I feel for the first time in a long time under charge of my own life. Although my parents and Mia can proceed with their case, now they know I will be squarely facing them and there is no good outcome for either of us. The encouragement of our friends and relatives keeps Jake and I forging ahead with our new life. Though the road to recovery with my sister and family will be long and challenging, we are ready to travel it together. Eventually, defending myself and acting morally offered a sense of tranquility I had been lacking for so long. Looking ahead, Jake and I know we are stronger since we confronted these obstacles squarely. Without the recommendations and encouragement in the comments, this would not have been feasible. All of you and your tales have taught me so much. Thank you, then farewell.